You are now listening to Ruthless Marriage by Bella King. Produced and published by After Midnight LLC. Copyright 2025, After Midnight LLC.
Chapter 1. Emily. Everything is the same for tonight's charity gala as it always is. Warm laughter, gorgeous gowns, perfect food, and a view outside of the California coastland. But something feels off anyway. I can't shake the prickle of unease at the base of my neck as I glide through the crowd, my emerald silk dress whispering against the marble floor, my smile a carefully practiced mask as I represent my family's business in public. The usual symphony of tinkling glasses and polite laughter rings hollow, like a discordant note in an otherwise perfect melody. It feels as if something is just slightly off, glances sliding off my face at the last moment, smiles faltering right as I come into the view. I spot Henry by the bar, his shoulders rigid beneath his perfectly tailored suit. My older brother has always been the chosen one, the responsible heir apparent to Belmont Realty Group, the real estate upon which our fortune and reputation are built. But tonight, his fingers drum an anxious rhythm against his crystal tumbler of scotch, as if something is wrong. "Henry," I murmur, sidling up beside him. "What's going on?" Something feels wrong tonight. Things aren't as relaxed as usual. He takes a long sip of whiskey before answering, his eyes darting nervously to the opposite end of the grand ballroom. "Everything's fine, Emily. Just look around at all our guests. You're being paranoid as usual." "Paranoid?" I arch an eyebrow, studying his profile. "Your left eye is twitching. It only does that when you're lying." "Don't start," he snaps, then immediately softens his tone as a couple of investors pass by, hyper-aware of how he looks in front of them. "Just focus on charming the guests. That's what you're good at, right? It's your role in the family. Leave the business concerns to me." The dismissal stings, but I'm used to it. In my family's eyes, I'm just the artistic middle child who chose freelance graphic design over real estate. Never mind my business degree or the fact that I've been begging to help run the company for years. He's still looking across the room with some unreadable emotion in his eyes. Curiosity piqued by Henry's obvious deflection, I follow his gaze as he takes another overly long sip of his whiskey. My breath catches in my throat at what I see. A man stands near the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights creating a halo around his broad shoulders and dark hair. Everything about him commands attention, from his expertly cut black designer suit to the confident way he holds himself, back straight, legs shoulder-width apart, chin raised as he surveys the room as if he owns it. He brings a champagne flute to his lips, and I find myself tracking the movement, mesmerized by his strong hands and the subtle flecks of muscle beneath fine wool. As if sensing my scrutiny, he turns towards me. Our eyes meet across the crowded room, and electricity crackles down my spine. His gaze is intense, almost predatory, and I feel heat bloom in my cheeks as an undeniable attraction stokes heat through my body. Dark hair swept back from sharp features, a neatly trimmed beard framing full lips that curl into the barest hint of a smirk, muscles barely contained by perfect tailoring. He's devastatingly handsome in a dangerous sort of way. I force myself to look away before the moment goes too long, pulse racing. Who is that man over there by the windows? I've never seen him at one of our galas before. Henry's glass clinks against the bar top as he sets it down empty. Nobody you need to concern yourself with, Emily. Really? I turn back to my brother, crossing my arms and stubbornly raising my chin. Because you've been staring at him like he's either going to save us or destroy us, and you don't know which one it is. Something is wrong, Henry. I know it. Tell me already what's going on in my own family. Emily, Henry warns, but I'm already moving away from him, determination surging through me. Something is definitely wrong, and I'm tired of being kept in the dark. One way or another, I'll find out what's happening. I weave through the crowd, searching for my parents' familiar faces. Their voices drift from behind the heavy oak doors of my father's study, sharp and loud with tension. I can't understand what they're saying until I come closer. There's too much noise. I reach for the handle, then pause as my mother's words cut through the wood. "We're going to lose everything, Charles. The company, the houses, even Chloe's apartment building. What will happen to her? She's still in school. She can't afford rent anywhere else. She'll have to drop out if we lose it all. My heart stops. Lose everything? I press closer to the door, straining to hear my father's response, my pulse racing and my stomach sinking at the same time. This doesn't sound good at all. Does Henry already know about this? My father's deep voice comes through the door. Vivian, please, I'm handling it tonight. This deal with Romanov will save us, you'll see. And if it doesn't? My mother's voice breaks. We're already drowning in debt. The bank is threatening to call in our loans. If they do, we won't be able to pay them. We're going to be ruined. Permanently ruined. That's it. I can't take this anymore. I push open the door, anger burning away any hesitation. I can't believe we're so close to ruin and they haven't said anything to me at all. My parents freeze like guilty teenagers, my father half perched on his desk while my mother paces the Persian rug, wringing her hands together anxiously. When were you going to tell me that we were about to lose it all? I demand, letting the door swing shut behind me. Or was I supposed to find out when they padlocked the gates and kicked Chloe out onto the streets? Emily. My father sighs, running a hand through his silver hair. This is private business involving the family company. You should be out there with the partygoers, not in here eavesdropping. No? I raise my eyebrows as high as they'll go. I shouldn't know that our family's company, my inheritance too, by the way, is about to collapse. That Chloe might end up homeless because we're in so much debt we can't pay our bills? That sounds like something I should have known about for a while. Should I be preparing for this? This doesn't concern you, my mother says, smoothing her already perfect updo, suddenly pulling it together in the face of my criticism. Your father and Henry have it under control. They're going to get us out of this situation, you'll see. A bitter laugh escapes me, ringing through the air with the power of a gunshot. Right, because they've done such a great job so far. I have a business degree, Mother. I've been asking to help run the company for years, but you all treat me like I'm still playing with crayons. You're a freelance graphic designer, my father says, his tone maddeningly patient. This situation requires real business experience. I graduated top of my class. The words burst out of me. I chose freelancing because you and Henry blocked me at every turn. But I know real estate, I know finance, and I definitely know business. If you'd just let me help with the company, I could keep Chloe from ever... The door opens behind me, cutting off my tirade. Heavy silence falls as footsteps approach, expensive Italian leather whispering against hardwood. The hair on the back of my neck rises, and I turn slowly, hyper-aware of every movement I make. I know it before I even see him. It's him, the man from across the ballroom. As I face him, my heart leaps into my throat and I feel heat rising to my face. Up close, he's even more striking than he was from a distance. He must be at least 6'2", towering over my 5'7" frame with the kind of commanding presence that makes the spacious study feel suddenly cramped. His eyes are a startling steel blue, currently fixed on me with an intensity that makes my skin tingle. He smells good, sweet and spicy in the best ways, like a whiskey that's been aged for 40 years, or an expensive cigar pulled across the underside of your nose. My body leans toward him without my approval, drawn in as I struggle not to close my eyes and fall toward him. The immediately surrender is almost as frightening as the news I've eavesdropped. Mr. Romanov, my father says quickly, moving forward and breaking me from my spell. I apologize for the delay. We were just discussing some private family matters. Romanov. The name from their argument clicks into place, and understanding floods through me. This is the man they're counting on to save us. The one whose deal could mean the difference between salvation and ruin. Those piercing eyes never leave mine as he speaks, his voice a deep rumble with the barest hint of a Russian accent. No apology necessary. I believe your lovely daughter and I were just about to be introduced. The way he says daughter sends a shiver down my spine, equal parts warning and promise. In this moment, I know with bone-deep certainty that my life is about to change forever. It's not just the bad energy radiating off my father like the stench of a fever, but the way that Mr. Romanov looks at me like he already owns me. Not just my trembling body, but my soul as well. Yes, Things are certainly about to change. I just don't know yet if that's a good thing or a very, very dangerous one. Chapter 2. Emily. The study feels like a pressure cooker ready to explode, the weight of the implications crushing the air out of the room. My father looks at me with pursed lips, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. My mother has a fake smile plastered to her face, her nails digging into her palms, her composed exterior betraying the panic in her eyes. Mr. Romanov, however, remains unruffled, his sharp gaze still fixed on me like he's attempting to pull me toward his broad chest with his mind. He's a man who clearly thrives on control, and right now I'm the center of his attention. This isn't just about the family business. Somehow, I'm also involved. Emily, my father starts, his voice steady but strained. Mr. Romanov is here to help us maneuver this little hiccup. Without his backing, we could really be in trouble, which is why I think it's proper for you to get familiar with him. Very familiar, Mr. Romanov says, his voice somewhere between a purr and a growl. You are part of the deal, after all. I gasp, struggling to keep my voice from shaking when I reply. And what exactly does this deal entail? Or am I not allowed to know about that either? Because so far all I see is you dragging me into some kind of transaction without my consent. It's not like that, my mother interjects, her voice cracking. We're not selling you off, Emily. It's an arrangement, a mutually beneficial one. Selling me off? That sounds exactly like what they're doing, and I won't stand for it. I don't even know this man, and his intentions seem far from good. Somehow my family is in over their heads even more than I thought. I laugh a little at how preposterous this is. Mutually beneficial? That's funny. Who is it beneficial for exactly? My voice rises, sharp and cutting, because it sure as hell doesn't sound beneficial for me. You're making decisions about my life like I'm some kind of commodity. You can't just trade me to this man like I'm a piece of property. Mr. Romanov steps forward, tucking one hand into his suit jacket and smiling politely. Miss Belmont, he says smoothly, his accent curling around my name like a snake coiling around its prey. This arrangement is not without its benefits for you as well. Your family's empire will remain intact, and you will find my companionship quite pleasant. I whirl on him, the anger bubbling inside me finally boiling over. Companionship? I don't need your companionship. What I need is for my family to stop treating me like a pawn in their business deals. You don't get to decide what's best for me. None of you do. My father's jaw tightens. Emily, you're being unreasonable. This is about survival, for all of us. If we lose the company, we lose everything. Do you want that on your conscience? Don't you dare put this on me, I snap, my voice trembling with fury. This is your mess, not mine. You made these bad decisions, and now you expect me to clean them up by… What? Playing house with some man I've never met? My mother rises from her chair, her hands outstretched as if to calm me. Emily, please. This isn't what you think. We're trying to protect you too. I step back, shaking my head. Protect me? By handing me over to a stranger? No, this isn't protection. This is betrayal. Silence falls across the room, but Mr. Romanov doesn't appear bothered by it. He's just as calm as he was when he stepped into the room, like he knows the outcome. Like all the cards are in his hand. Like no matter what I say or do, I'm already his. You, I say, pointing at him, my voice low and venomous. You think you can just walk in here, throw some money around, and take whatever you want? Think again. I'm not for sale. To my surprise, his lips curl into the faintest smirk. I admire your spirit, Miss Belmont. But this is not about what you want. It's about what your family needs. Well, my family doesn't get to decide for me anymore, I snap. I'm done letting them control my life. Without waiting for a response, I turn on my heel and march toward the door, my pulse pounding in my ears. My father calls after me, his voice desperate, but I don't stop. I'm suffocating in this room, in this life, and I need to get out before it kills me. I may not know what comes next, but one thing is certain. I won't let them use me as a bargaining chip. Not for the company, not for their survival, and certainly not for Mr. Romanov. Let them deal with the consequences of their choices. I'll carve out my own path, even if it means walking away from everything I've ever known.
Chapter 3. Artem. I lean against a cool marble pillar, watching Emily Belmont storm across the ballroom like a gathering storm on the horizon. The crystal chandeliers cast golden highlights in her auburn hair, and even from here, I can see the fire in her eyes as she confronts her brother about the news, her younger sister hovering nearby. She's magnificent in her fury, even when I'm the subject of said fury. My fingers tighten imperceptibly around my champagne flute, as I consider the position I'm in. When Charles Belmont approached me about saving his failing company through a marriage arrangement with his daughter, I expected a demure society princess meekly lowering her head and agreeing to a marriage on paper. Instead, I find myself captivated by this force of nature who just spent the last few minutes challenging her family's patriarchy in ways that would get her killed in my world. Her voice raised in anger still rings in my ears, the memory of her furious gaze and reddened cheeks imprinted on me indelibly. "Sir?" Victor materializes at my shoulder, his voice low. "The documents are ready for you to review." I wave him off without taking my eyes from Emily. She's gesturing animatedly now, her emerald dress shifting with each movement to reveal tantalizing glimpses of toned leg. The sight stirs something primal in me, a hunger I haven't felt in years. "Your wife-to-be seems spirited," Victor observes carefully, his tone so neutral it conveys multitude of meaning, to say the least. "She has no idea what she's walking into," I murmur, a smirk tugging at my lips. "But she's certainly making it interesting for me. That's not something I expected when I first spoke to her father." Through the crowd, I catch fragments of her heated conversation with her siblings. Her younger sister, Chloe, looks close to tears, her expression confused and distraught, while her brother Henry attempts damage control by trying to keep it all together, his movements visibly tipsy as he sips on another draft of whiskey. The family's desperation is palpable. They know their entire empire hangs by a quickly fraying thread. One signature from me could save them all, or destroy them completely. "I won't be silent about this," Emily's voice carries across the room, drawing disapproving glances from nearby guests. "You can't just trade me away like some medieval bargaining chip. I'm an adult with my own business, not some princess in a tower awaiting rescue." My smirk widens at her words. If only she knew the truth about the man she's being traded to. The feared Voron, hiding in plain sight as a legitimate businessman. The irony would almost be funny if it weren't so dangerous for her to know. I've seen enough of this little family play. Pushing off from the pillar, I move through the crowd with practiced ease, my steps overtaking the distance in great strides. Heads turn as I pass. They always do. Power recognizes power, even if these socialites don't know exactly what kind of power I wield. Like a herd of gazelles when a lion is nearby, they sense a threat, even if they don't see it in time to avoid the killing stroke. "You know," I drawl as I approach the siblings, "throwing a fit won't change the situation, Emily. It only makes you look adorable." I raise a brow at her, though perhaps that was the plan all along. She whirls to face me, surprise flashing in those remarkable eyes before irritation takes its place, scrunching her nose and drawing her brows together. Up close, she's even more stunning, all creamy skin and delicate features, with a stubborn tilt to her chin that makes me want to grab her and... I suppress that thought. Barely. "Adorable?" she repeats, crossing her arms. The movement draws attention to her impressive cleavage, but I keep my gaze locked on her face with some difficulty. "I think you're confusing me with someone else, Mr. Romanov." The way she says my name, like it's something distasteful and dirty on her pretty pink tongue, sends a thrill through me. Most women simper and flirt, hoping to catch the attention of the mysterious Russian billionaire. But not Emily. No. She looks at me like she'd rather punch me than marry me, a challenge that quickens my blood almost as much as her undeniable beauty. "Emily, watch your tongue," Henry warns, but I silence him with a look. This is between me and his sister now. It's fine, I say smoothly, stepping closer to my reluctant bride. Your sister and I should get better acquainted, don't you think? Emily's pulse jumps visibly at her throat as I invade her personal space. The subtle scent of her perfume, something floral and expensive, teases my senses. She has to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact, and the position does interesting things to my imagination. There's nothing to get acquainted about, she says firmly, though I catch the slight tremor in her voice and the heat flushing her cheeks at my nearness. I haven't agreed to anything, and this doesn't go forward without my agreement. I lean in closer, lowering my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Well, whether you like it or not, we have a deal to discuss. You might as well make the best of it. A shiver runs through her at my proximity, and I notice her pupils dilate slightly. So she's not as immune to me as she pretends. Interesting. I don't make deals with strangers, she counters, but there's less bite in her tone now. Then let's remedy that. I capture her hand before she can protest, bringing it to my lips. Her skin is soft, warm, and I let my kiss linger longer than strictly necessary. Artem Romanov, at your service. No longer a stranger now. A blush creeps up her neck, staining her cheeks a delightful pink. You're very sure of yourself, aren't you? I always get what I want, Krasotka. The endearment slips out unbidden, and her eyes narrow at the familiar word. And right now, what I want is a dance. I don't... She starts to protest, but I'm already leading her toward the dance floor, my hand firm at the small of her back, the warmth of her body seeping onto my fingers. The orchestra strikes up a waltz, and I pull her into my arms. She's the perfect height, fitting against me like she was made for it. The thought is unsettling in a way I didn't expect. You're very presumptuous, she mutters as we begin to move. And you're very resistant to the inevitable. I guide her through a turn, enjoying the way her body follows my lead despite her protests. Your family's company is drowning in debt, and your family is on the verge of ruin because of it. I'm offering a lifeline you can't afford to refuse. At the cost of my freedom, she shoots back, at the cost of everything I've made of myself. I know you've heard plenty of garbage from my parents about what I do, but I'm actually quite successful on my own. My hand tightens on her waist. I'm sure you're quite the entrepreneur, wild and free, but freedom is overrated. Safety, security, power, these are what matter in the end. Is that what you tell yourself at night to help you sleep? Her eyes flash up to mine, challenging. That women want to be controlled, tamed, and taken care of. That the bars of a cage are better than wings to fly free with. A laugh rumbles in my chest, surprising us both. You have no idea what kind of cage you're already in, Emily. Your life is not your own as much as you may think it is. At least my offer comes with golden bars, with comfort and security, safety and the promise of a future. There's no freedom in this life. Only a jail that feels like a resort, and the eventual promise of true freedom through death. We're drawing attention now, other couples giving us a wide berth on the dance floor. My reputation tends to have that effect on others. But Emily seems oblivious to the stares, too caught up in our verbal sparring, her sharp blue eyes focused solely on me. And what exactly is your offer, Mr. Romanov? She emphasizes my name again, like a weapon on her lashing tongue. What do you have to give me that I don't already have as a single woman with a life of her own and her own business? I spin her out and pull her back sharply, pressing her closer than strictly necessary until her soft curves mold to mine. Her breath catches as our bodies align, and I feel a flash of triumph at the knowledge that she's aroused at my presence. Marriage, I say simply. 1 year, maybe 2. You play the devoted wife, I get my citizenship, and your family keeps their empire. Everyone wins. Except me. On the contrary. I let my gaze drift deliberately down her body, enjoying the way she shivers. I think you'll find being my wife has many benefits that may suit you more than you realize. The music swells, and I dip her low, supporting her weight easily with one arm. Her hair cascades back, exposing the elegant line of her throat, where her pulse beats unsteadily. The trust implicit in the movement that I won't drop her isn't lost on either of us. It makes a stir of arousal go through me. When I pull her up, she's breathing harder, her chest rising and falling rapidly against mine, her cleavage spilling from her dress. "You're dangerous," she whispers, more to herself than me. Absolutely far too wild a man to act so calm. I smile, knowing it doesn't reach my eyes. "More than you know, my darling. More than you could ever know." The song ends, but I keep her close for a moment longer, memorizing the feel of her in my arms, the heat of her body, and the smell of her skin. Soon, she'll be mine in every way that matters. The thought sends a surge of possessiveness through me that awakens desires I thought long dormant. "Think about it, and talk to your family," I say, finally releasing her. "But don't think too long. Some offers have expiration dates, and there are plenty of other options on the table for me. In the case of you and your family, I'm afraid that I might be the only one." I turn and walk away before she can respond, feeling her eyes burning into my back. The game is set, the piece is in motion, and despite her protests, I know she'll agree. She has no choice. Her family has seen to that with all the foolish business decisions they've made. But as I signal Victor to bring the contracts, I can't shake the feeling that I'm playing with fire. Emily Belmont is no docile society bride waiting for a man to save her. She's a warrior in designer heels, and something tells me she's going to make this arrangement far more complicated than I anticipated. I look forward to it.
Chapter 4. Emily. The golden hour sun streams through the bay windows of my family's Manhattan Beach mansion, casting long shadows across the imported marble floors. I pause in the foyer, my hand trailing along the antique console table that's been there since my childhood, watermarks and wine stains buffed out lovingly to a patina. Soon, all of this could be gone. The art, the furniture, the memories. Unless I marry a man I barely know, who looks at me like I'm dinner, dessert, and a whole meal all at once. A man who intrigues me and terrifies me by turn. The sound of children's laughter drifts from the family room, followed by Henry's wife Sarah's gentle scolding. My nephew and niece are probably climbing on the pristine white sofas again, blissfully unaware that their whole world teeters on the edge of collapse. I wonder what Henry will tell them if I don't agree to marry Artem and save the family business. Will he blame their Aunt Emily for their downfall, or admit that his own masculine hubris and foolish business decisions set them on the path to ruin? I have the feeling I know the answer to that question. I smooth down my silk blouse and take a deep breath. Just get through dinner, I tell myself. But my fingers tremble slightly as I reach for the doorknob, Artem's intense gaze and commanding presence still burning in my memory from the gala. "Emily!" Chloe bounces up from her seat the moment I enter, her face glowing with excitement. At 21, my baby sister still radiates the kind of innocent enthusiasm that makes my heart ache. "Tell me everything about him. How long have you really been talking online? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I force a smile, the elaborate lie our parents concocted sitting heavy in my stomach. I want to protect her from this dark world as much as I resent her for her position on the sidelines, kept out of it all. "You know how private I am about dating, Chloe." "Private?" Henry scoffs from his position by the fireplace, tumbler of scotch already in hand. More like non-existent, which makes this whirlwind romance all the more interesting. I shoot him a warning look as Sarah corrals their children, Emma and James, away from their attempt to scale the bookshelves. His wife gives me a distracted smile, completely oblivious to the tension crackling between us siblings. So that answers my question about whether or not she's been kept apprised of her family's position. "I still can't believe you're marrying Artem Romanov," Chloe sighs dreamily, falling back onto the sofa. "He's like literally the most eligible bachelor in California, maybe on the whole West Coast. Did you see the way he looked at you at the gala? So intense." My cheeks heat at the memory. The way his impossibly dark brown eyes had raked over me as we danced, his large hands spanning my waist possessively. The subtle accent that made every word sound like both a threat and a promise. The endearments that fell from his lips and the way he pulled me flushed to his body without a care for propriety. I thought you were planning to be single forever and focus on your career until at least your 30s. Sarah chimes in, finally getting the kids settled with their tablets. What changed? Everything, I murmur, more to myself than them. Then louder. Sometimes life surprises you. Like a fairy tale, Chloe beams. Meeting your Prince Charming online, falling in love through messages, and then that magical first meeting at the gala. If only she knew the truth. The story our parents fabricated, that we met online and our first meeting at the gala confirmed that we want to spend our lives together, was the only excuse they could come up with to make this unbelievable love story pass muster. My Prince Charming is more like a dragon, dangerous and mesmerizing in equal measure, and our first meeting was anything but magical, unless you count the sparks of mutual antagonism. The door opens and our parents sweep in, my mother resplendent in designer silk, my father's silver hair perfectly coiffed, the picture of old money and success. But I can see the cracks in their facade now, the slight tremor in my mother's hands, the new lines around my father's eyes, the pale set to their features and anxious looks they pass each other. Dinner is served, my mother announces, but her smile doesn't quite reach her eyes. The first course will be out momentarily. Actually, I say, rising from my seat, I need to speak with you and Father first. Henry too. Chloe pouts. Why can't I? Take the children to the dining room, dear. My mother cuts her off smoothly. We'll be there shortly. As Sarah ushers everyone out, I wait for the door to click shut before turning to my parents. What's the plan? After you announce my marriage to a man I've known for all of 5 minutes? How are you going to sell this obvious lie to the public? Emily, my father sighs. We've discussed this. The story is already in place. I'm not talking about your convenient fiction, I snap. I mean, what happens next? Do I just show up at events on his arm like some trophy wife, simpering and smiling for the cameras? Henry takes a long sip of scotch. That's generally what wives do, yes. I resist the urge to throw something at him. And the company? Will I at least have some say in its future, since I'm literally selling myself to save it? Artem will handle the business side of things, my father says firmly. Along with Henry, of course. Of course. Because despite my business degree and years of begging to be involved, I'm still just the artistic middle child who needs to know her place. I'm only enough to be sold off, never enough to actually get a say. The media will be informed tomorrow, my mother continues, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her dress. You and Artem will need to be seen together, restaurants, events, the usual courtship displays. People need to believe in this romance. Romance, I almost laugh. There's nothing romantic about being traded like a prized mare to save my family's fortune. Even if my future husband does make my pulse race with a single look. And what about Chloe? I ask quietly. Have you told her she'll be homeless if this falls through? That the building you house her in will be seized along with everything else? My mother pales. That won't happen. Not now that Artem will save us all? I finish bitterly. Yes, at the low, low price of my freedom. You're being dramatic, Henry says. Artem Romanov is wealthy, powerful, and from what I hear, hasn't had a serious relationship in years. Most men at his level of wealth have an armful of women everywhere they go. You could do worse. I think of Artem's predatory grace, the barely leashed power in his movements. The way he'd said, I always get what I want, like it wasn't just a statement, but a warning. Or, I say with a thin smile, much, much worse could happen to me. Somehow I don't think he's the type of man who likes to hear the word no. Enough, my father cuts in. What's done is done. The contracts are signed. In 2 weeks you'll be Mrs. Romanov, and our family's legacy will be secure. There's nothing for you or anyone else to worry about. I close my eyes, remembering the heat of Artem's touch as he'd kissed my hand, the dangerous glint in his eye when I'd challenged him. My body betrays me with a shiver that's not entirely fear. Fine, I say finally. I'll play my part. but I want something in return. My father's eyebrows rise. Oh? I'm sure he wasn't expecting this, but I'm not the type of person to give and give without wanting anything back. I know my worth in this deal. When this is all over, when Artem has his citizenship and I'm free, I want a real position in the company, not just a title, but actual power to make decisions, I say, pulling back my shoulders and making eye contact with my father. Henry makes a choking sound, but my father merely studies me thoughtfully. We'll see, he says finally. For now, focus on being the perfect fiancé. Everything else can wait. The perfect fiancé. To a man who makes me feel like prey every time his eyes meet mine. A man who sets my skin on fire even as my instincts scream danger. As we move toward the dining room, I catch a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. I hardly recognize the woman staring back. She looks poised, determined, ready to sacrifice everything for her family. But underneath, my heart races with equal parts fear and anticipation. Because no matter how much I try to deny it, there's a part of me that craves the darkness I see in Artem's eyes. A part that wonders what it would be like to be claimed by a man like him, to be consumed by that intensity. God help me, I think, as we join the others at the dinner table, but I might be in more danger from myself than from him.
Chapter 5. Artem. The ocean stretches endlessly beyond the Strand House's floor-to-ceiling windows, the setting sun painting the waves in shades of gold and crimson. But I find my attention drawn instead to the woman seated across from me, the dying light setting her auburn hair ablaze, a harsh look in her ice-blue eyes that would cut a lesser man in half. Emily Belmont is a study in contradictions. The delicate cut of her emerald silk dress suggests vulnerability, but the steel in her spine as she meets my gaze head-on speaks of anything but. My security team is stationed discreetly around the restaurant, Victor at the bar, 2 more by the exits, yet she's the only potential threat I can't take my eyes off. I have the feeling that my beautiful wife-to-be wouldn't even need to be bribed with money to give away my location to an assassin. She might even step over my dying body on her way to the bathroom. It only makes the thought of claiming her that much more alluring. The wine list here is excellent, I say, lifting my glass. Though perhaps not up to your usual standards. I notice you haven't touched your Pinot. Her lips curve slightly, though the smile doesn't reach her eyes. Fishing for information about my tastes, Mr. Romanov? I thought this was a business arrangement, not a date. A fake marriage between 2 fake people. You will call me Artem, I say, enjoying the way she bristles at the familiarity. And knowledge is power, Devochka. I like to know what I'm getting when I make my investments. Is that what I am? An investment? She takes a deliberate sip of her wine, leaving a perfect red imprint on the glass. How reassuring to a woman like me. I love to be referred to as an object. I lean back, studying her. Most women would be falling over themselves to secure a marriage to one of California's wealthiest bachelors. But Emily, she looks at me like I'm something dangerous. Repulsive, even. She's not wrong at all, which is why I'm drawn to her. Tell me then, I say, switching tactics. Why did your family choose you for this particular sacrifice? Surely your sister... Chloe is off limits, Emily cuts in, her voice sharp. Protective. Interesting. She's barely 21, still in school, and living in one of our company's buildings, which she'll lose if... She trails off, that hint of vulnerability flickering across her face again. If I don't step in to save your family's crumbling empire. Her eyes flash with anger. You don't have to sound so smug about it. On the contrary, I signal the waiter for more wine. I find your honesty refreshing. Most people in your position would be trying to convince me this is about love, not money. Would you prefer I lie? She arches an eyebrow. Pretend I've secretly been pining for the mysterious Artem Romanov? That I dream of being your trophy wife? That you make my pulse quicken and my chest heave with longing? I laugh at how well she comes up with such vivid stories. No, I much prefer this version of you, I say. The sharp-tongued graphic designer who's about to marry a man she despises to save her family. That's tragic and yet touching. I don't despise you. The words come out softer than her previous remarks. I don't know you well enough for that. But I know what this is. A business transaction. Nothing more. And yet, I lean forward, dropping my voice to a register that makes her pupils dilate slightly. Your pulse jumps every time I get too close. Your breath catches when our eyes meet. Tell me, Emily, is that also just business? Or is there some truth to your sarcastic remarks? A flush creeps up her neck, staining her cheeks pink. You're very sure of yourself, she mutters. I have reason to be. I reach across the table, capturing her hand before she can pull away. Her skin is soft, warm, her pulse racing exactly as I predicted beneath my thumb. We may not have a choice about this marriage, but we can choose how we handle it. And how do you suggest we handle it? Her voice wavers slightly, but she doesn't withdraw her hand. I trace small circles on her palm, watching the way her breath hitches. With honesty. You're here because your family needs my money and influence. I'm here because I need citizenship that can't be questioned. Simple. Nothing about this is simple. She finally pulls her hand away, but the lingering heat of her skin burns against my fingers. I'm the family scapegoat, you know. The rebellious middle child who chose art over real estate. Almost 30. Single. Expendable. Disposable. Her laugh is bitter. When my father suggested this arrangement, no one even bothered to ask if I had plans of my own for my life. Did you? That's not the point. She lifts her chin defiantly. The point is, I'm tired of being underestimated. By my family, and now by you. I study her over the rim of my wine glass, intrigued despite myself. What makes you think I underestimate you? Please. She rolls her eyes. You're treating this dinner like a game, testing me, probing for weaknesses. I'm sure you have my entire life mapped out in some file. The failed relationships, the struggling freelance career, all the reasons I'm the perfect pawn in whatever scheme you're running. Clever girl. She's not entirely wrong. I do have a file on her, but nothing in it prepared me for the reality of Emily Belmont. You think you have me figured out as well? I counter smoothly. The ruthless businessman, the foreign investor with suspicious motives. Tell me, what else do you assume about me? Her eyes narrow. I assume you're dangerous. I assume this marriage serves a larger purpose than just citizenship. And I assume if I knew what that purpose was, I'd run screaming in the opposite direction. I can't help the smile that curves my lips. If she only knew how right she is. The feared Voron, hiding in plain sight, about to marry this fascinating creature who sees too much and yet not enough. Smart girl, I murmur. But you're not running, are you? Why is that? No, she agrees quietly. I'm not. Because despite everything, this arrangement solves both our problems. You get your citizenship, I save my family and keep my sister off the streets. Clean, simple, businesslike. And what if I don't want clean and simple? The words slip out before I can stop them, rougher than intended. Her eyes widen fractionally, and I watch the pulse jump in her throat. What do you mean? Instead of answering, I reach across the table again, this time to brush a stray auburn curl from her face. She freezes at the contact, but I don't miss the way she leans almost imperceptibly into my touch. I mean, I say softly, letting my fingers trail down her cheek, that business arrangements can have additional benefits. If both parties are willing, that is. Her breath catches. Mr. Romanov. Artem, I correct her again, my voice dropping to a growl that makes her shiver. If we're going to be married, you should get used to using my first name, among other things. The innuendo hangs heavy between us, charged with possibility. For a moment, I think she might bolt. Her whole body is coiled with tension, like a deer sensing a predator. But then something shifts in her eyes. A spark of that defiance I'm quickly becoming addicted to. You're playing with fire, she warns, but there's a breathless quality to her voice that betrays her attraction to me. I smile, knowing it shows all my predatory intent. Maybe I like getting burned. Our eyes lock across the candlelit table, and the air between us crackles with something far more dangerous than mere attraction. This woman, with her sharp tongue and vulnerable heart, is going to complicate everything. And God help me, but I think I'm going to enjoy every minute of it. The real question is, when she finally discovers who I really am, will that fire in her eyes turn to fear? Or will it burn even brighter? I look forward to finding out.
Chapter 6. Emily. The ocean breeze drifts through my apartment's open windows, carrying the salt tang of Manhattan Beach with it and the smell of ocean air. Under normal circumstances, the view of endless blue horizon and quiet sound of waves lapping the shore would calm me. Today, it just reminds me how trapped I feel, despite all this open space before me. The venue is already booked, my mother announces, spreading what feels like the 100th wedding magazine across my coffee table. Artem was quite insistent about the peninsula. Of course he was. Only the most exclusive hotel in Beverly Hills would do for a man like Artem Romanov. I suppress a shiver at the memory of our dinner last night. The heat in his eyes when he'd touched my face, the way his accent had roughened when he'd suggested our arrangement could have additional benefits. "Ooh, look at these centerpieces!" Chloe squeals, yanking me back to the present. She's sprawled on my cream sectional, bridal magazines scattered around her like fallen leaves. They'd look amazing with the crystal chandeliers in the ballroom. From the TV mounted on the wall, a news anchor's voice cuts through our wedding planning session. Still no word on the whereabouts of the notorious Russian crime boss, known only as Voron. Sources say the Bratva leader's sudden disappearance has created a power vacuum in the criminal underworld, causing violence and confusion. My mother's hand shoots out, snatching the remote to change the channel. "Such unpleasant news," she mutters. "Now, Emily, about the guest list." "I thought Artem was handling all the major decisions," I say, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "That's what you told me." She glances meaningfully at Chloe, then lowers her voice. "He is, but we need to maintain appearances. Everything must look natural." Natural. Right. Because there's nothing more natural than planning a wedding to a man I barely know, all to save our family from financial ruin. At least you get to pick some things. Chloe sighs dreamily, oblivious to our tension. The flowers, the tablecloths, the candles. She hugs a magazine to her chest. "God, you're so lucky, Emily. A whirlwind online romance with a gorgeous billionaire? It's like something out of a fairy tale." If fairy tales featured arranged marriages and desperate families selling their daughters to save their business empires, maybe. Then again, it is far closer to the reality of a princess than what the movies tell us. I'm nothing but chattel as far as my family is concerned. "I still can't believe you kept him secret for so long," Chloe continues. "All those months of messages, falling in love through screens, creating an emotional connection, and then that magical first meeting at the gala." She sighs again. "I hope I find my own billionaire someday." "You should focus on finishing school," I say automatically, then wince as I remember why she needs to stay in school and in the company-owned apartment that could be seized any day. Every woman needs a degree, no matter who she marries. Your studies should be your focus right now. "Speaking of school," my mother interjects smoothly, "how are your architectural design classes going, darling?" As Chloe launches into a detailed description of her latest project, I flip absently through a floral catalog. Roses or lilies, peonies or orchids? Each choice feels meaningless, like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic when it's about to hit an iceberg. My mother leans close while Chloe is distracted. "I know this isn't ideal," she whispers, "but Artem seems taken with you. That's good. Use it to your advantage." I stare at her, something bitter rising in my throat. "Use it? Like you're using me to save the family?" "Emily!" My phone buzzes, Artem's name lighting up the screen. Despite everything, my heart skips. "What do you think of these?" Below his message are photos of wedding invitations, classic cream cardstock with elegant gold lettering. They're beautiful, tasteful, exactly what I would have chosen myself, which is unsettling. Surprised you didn't go with something more ostentatious? I text back before I can stop myself. No diamonds encrusted on the envelopes? His response is immediate. I save the diamonds for more intimate occasions, darling. Heat floods my cheeks as I remember the intensity in his eyes last night, the promise in his touch. Is that a threat or a promise? I find myself typing. Both. Everything with me is both. Emily? Chloe's voice breaks through my haze. You're blushing. Is that Artem messaging you? No, I lie, just as another text comes through. It's just work. Don't forget to approve the final flower arrangements by tonight, Artem texts. Though I'm sure you'll look beautiful even without them. Not asking, telling. The presumption should irritate me, but instead, I feel that dangerous warmth again, spreading through my chest like wildfire. Why do you care about flowers? I challenge. I care about everything that touches my bride. It is him, Chloe squeals, peering over my shoulder. Oh my God, you guys are so cute. I can't believe you found true love online. My mother watches me with knowing eyes. Yes, the internet can bring people together in unexpected ways. Another text. Unless you're nervous about walking down the aisle toward me. My fingers hover over the keys. I should be nervous. Everything about Artem Romanov screams danger. From his too-perfect background to the way his security team shadows our every move. Just last night, I'd told him myself that I suspected he was dangerous. But there's something else there too. Something that makes my pulse race and my skin tingle. Something that makes me want to play with fire, even knowing I'll get burned. White roses, I type back, and I never get nervous. Brave girl, comes his reply. We'll see how steady your hands are when I slip that ring on your finger. Look at that smile, Chloe teases. You're totally smitten. If only she knew. This isn't love. It's a perilous game of cat and mouse, where I'm not entirely sure which role I'm playing. And the stakes are impossibly high. This could end in total disaster. I set my phone aside, trying to focus on the wedding details spread before me. But my mind keeps drifting to Artem, to the heat of his hand on my skin, the way his accent thickens when he's amused or aroused, to the mysteries that surround him, drawing me in even as my instincts scream to run. On the TV, they've switched to entertainment news, but I catch a glimpse of the previous story's headline scrolling across the bottom. Voron vanishes. Russian crime lord's disappearance raises questions. A chill runs down my spine, though I'm not sure why. Whatever game Artem and I are playing, whatever secrets lie beneath his perfect facade, I'm already in too deep to back out now. I just hope I remember how to swim when I finally hit bottom. Earth to Emily. Chloe waves a magazine in front of my face. Focus. We need to pick your wedding colors before we can do anything else. I paste on a smile, pushing away my unease. Right. Sorry. What were you thinking? As my sister chatters about color schemes and my mother makes notes in her planner, I feel my phone buzz again. I don't need to look to know it's him. Whatever Artem Romanov is hiding, whatever he really wants from me, I'll find out soon enough. The question is, will I survive the revelation? For my family's sake, I have to hope so.
Chapter 7. Artem. The peninsula is full of some of the most well-to-do and famous guests possible to celebrate our engagement party, but my attention is fixed on Emily as she works the room. She's breathtaking in a champagne silk gown that catches the light with every movement. Her auburn hair twisted into an elegant updo that exposes the graceful line of her neck. The diamond necklace I gifted her earlier this evening glitters at her throat, a collar of ice and fire that marks her as mine. I remember her expression when I'd presented it to her just hours ago, the way her fingers had trembled as she touched the stones. I can't accept this, she'd whispered, but I'd already been fastening it around her neck, my fingers lingering on her pulse point. It's too ostentatious. You can, I'd told her, and you will. My future wife doesn't wear costume jewelry. Now, watching her charm another group of socialites, I can see she hasn't stopped touching it, like it's both a comfort and a burden, much like our engagement itself. She plays the part well. Victor murmurs at my shoulder, following my gaze, as if she was born to it. Indeed she does. Watching her laugh at some society matron's joke, you'd never guess this marriage was arranged to save her family from ruin. Her smile is radiant, her body language open and engaging. Only I seem to notice the slight tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers keep straying to that diamond necklace, like it's both comforting and binding. Too well, I reply softly, taking a measured sip of scotch. It makes me wonder what else she's capable of hiding. A burst of genuine laughter draws my attention back to Emily. She's with her sister now, their heads bent close as they share some private joke. Young Chloe practically vibrates with excitement, no doubt still believing the fairy tale version of our romance that her parents have fed her. The sight stirs something unexpected in my chest, a longing for that easy intimacy, that unguarded joy with someone who truly knows you. I watch as Emily smooths her sister's hair back, a gesture so tender it makes my chest ache. This is what I'm protecting by marrying her. Not just the Belmont fortune, but these small moments of sisterly affection. If their company falls, Chloe loses everything, including her home. The weight of that responsibility sits heavy on Emily's shoulders, though she hides it well, at least until she thinks no one is looking. And I'm always looking. Sir. Victor's voice drops lower, urgent. We need to discuss the situation in Moscow. I give a slight nod and follow him to a secluded alcove, where the party's ambient noise will mask our conversation. The familiar weight of my shoulder holster presses against my ribs, a constant reminder of the danger that shadows my every move. Even here, surrounded by California's elite, I'm never truly safe. Our sources confirm Kazakov is getting closer, Victor reports, his face carefully neutral. He's convinced Voron fled to America after the attempted coup. His men have been spotted in major cities along both coasts, in all major port cities and anywhere you have holdings. Let him search, I say, scanning the crowd out of habit. My security team is strategically placed throughout the ballroom, nearly invisible in their designer suits. He'll never suspect the feared Bratva leader is hiding in plain sight as a legitimate businessman about to marry into old money. My face is plastered all over the Southern California tabloids. As far as he's concerned, I'm the soon-to-be husband of Emily Belmont. Nothing more than that. Victor shifts uncomfortably. There's more. The FBI is also investigating Voron's disappearance. They're cooperating with Russian authorities, sharing intelligence. Agent Roberts has been asking questions about new Russian investors in California. Which is exactly why this marriage is crucial. I watch as Emily accepts another glass of champagne, her practiced smile never wavering. She's speaking with a local judge now, no doubt another of her father's connections. American citizenship through marriage is nearly impossible to challenge, especially with all the pictures we'll be taking and the approval of her family. Once it's official, I'll be untouchable, able to establish operations here until the threat is eliminated. And the girl? Victor asks carefully. What happens to her when Kazakov eventually discovers the truth? He's not known for his mercy, especially where Voron is concerned. The question hits harder than it should. I've spent years building my empire, becoming the shadow that other shadows fear. Sentiment has no place in my world. And yet, she'll be protected, I say firmly. No one touches what's mine. I'll make sure of that. Even if she runs when she discovers who you really are, what you've done. My fingers tighten around my glass as memories surface. The sound of gunfire, the smell of blood, the weight of power bought with violence. She won't run. You sound very sure of yourself. I am. I think of the fire in Emily's eyes when she challenges me, the way she shivers under my touch even as she tries to maintain her distance, the way she'd melted against me during our dance at the gala, despite her protests, her body conforming to mine as if she knew it was where she belonged. There's something in her that craves the danger. She just doesn't know it yet. As if sensing our attention, Emily glances our way. Our eyes lock across the crowded room, and for a moment, her carefully constructed mask slips. I see the vulnerability beneath her confidence, the fear warring with attraction. Then someone claims her attention, and the moment passes. But the image of her unguarded expression lingers. The engagement announcement is everywhere. Victor continues, pulling up news articles on his phone. Your face alongside hers in every society page and tabloid in Southern California. The mysterious Russian billionaire and the California real estate princess. It's drawing attention. I smile grimly. The perfect cover. Who would suspect Voron of being foolish enough to put himself in the spotlight, to pose for photographers and attend charity galas? It's risky, Victor warns, his voice dropping even lower. If Kazakov makes the connection... He won't, I cut him off, draining my scotch. The man knew me for years in Moscow and never suspected I was Voron. He's not going to recognize me from some society page photos. A commotion near the bar draws our attention. Some drunk socialite, the heir to a tech fortune if I remember correctly, has grabbed Emily's arm, pulling her close to whisper something that makes her stiffen. Before I can move, she extracts herself with practiced grace, but I don't miss the flash of discomfort that crosses her face. Excuse me, I murmur to Victor, already moving through the crowd. The predator in me awakens, eager to remind everyone here exactly who they're dealing with. I reach Emily just as she's trying to edge away from another overeager guest. My hand settles possessively on the small of her back, and I feel the slight tremor that runs through her at my touch. The bare skin exposed by her backless dress is warm under my palm, soft in a way that makes me want to explore every inch of her. Everything all right, darling? I keep my voice light, but there's an edge to it that makes the other man step back. He might not know exactly what I am, but something primitive in him recognizes the threat. Fine, Emily says, leaning into me slightly. Whether seeking protection or playing her part, I'm not sure. Mr. Harrison was just leaving. He said he needed to attend to some business. The man retreats and Emily lets out a shaky breath. You don't have to hover. I can handle handsy drunks. This isn't my first society party. I know you can. I turn her to face me, using the movement to draw her closer. The scent of her perfume, something floral and subtle, mingles with her natural warmth, making arousal flood me. But you don't have to. That's what husbands are for, yes? We're not married yet, she reminds me, but there's a breathless quality to her voice that betrays her. Her pupils are dilated, her cheeks flushed, not just from the champagne. You're not my husband. Details. I brush my thumb across her lower lip, enjoying the way her pulse jumps. But I'm a very jealous man. You should know that. Anyone who bothers you is going to pay the price for their actions. She shakes her head at me, almost rolling her eyes. And what are you going to do? Fight them? There's no point in confronting someone just to stoop to their level and throw fists. I'd expect better from someone so wealthy. I hide the smirk that's threatening to give away how wrong she is. No, that would be uncouth of me, wouldn't it? I wouldn't throw fists, as you put it, but I would make sure they never bothered you again. She frowns, but I don't give her time to respond. Dance with me, I say, pulling her closer. It's not a request. Emily knows it, but she still lifts her chin defiantly. What if I say no? You won't. I guide her onto the dance floor, pulling her against me as the orchestra strikes up a waltz. She fits perfectly in my arms, as if she was made to be there. I think she knows it too, though there's a defiance in her eyes that suggests she will resist me until her very last breath. You've been avoiding me all evening. I whisper in her ear, enjoying the way she shivers at my proximity. I've barely seen a single glimpse of my bride-to-be at our own engagement party. I've been playing my part by mingling among the guests and gushing about my husband-to-be, she corrects, though her fingers curl into my shoulder. Isn't that what you wanted? The perfect society couple? What I want, I say, letting my hand slide lower on her back, low enough that she stiffens subtly, is for you to stop pretending with me. Save the act for them. I want your honest self. She shivers again, her fingers tightening on my shoulder. Isn't our whole relationship built on pretense? It's all fake. The question is a reminder of the pretense she's still unaware of. If she knew who I really was, what I'm capable of, the bodies I've left in my wake, the empire built on blood and fear. But instead of pulling away, I draw her closer, loving the heat of her body even as she tries to resist the attraction that draws us closer. Not everything between us is pretense, I say roughly. And you know it. Emily looks up at me then, her eyes filled with a confusion of emotions I understand all too well. Because despite everything, the lies, the danger, the impossibility of it all, there's real attraction growing between us, something that is as dangerous as it is thrilling. As we turn across the dance floor, I catch Victor's warning look from across the room. He's right. I'm playing a dangerous game. Emily Belmont is supposed to be a means to an end, nothing more. A convenient cover for Voron to hide in plain sight. But watching her now, seeing the way she fights her attraction to me even as she melts into my touch, I realize I might have miscalculated. Because for the first time in years, I find myself wanting something more than power and revenge. I want her. Not just her body or her name, but all of her. The fire in her eyes when she challenges me, the softness in her smile when she thinks I'm not looking, the way she protects her family even at the cost of her own happiness, her strength, her vulnerability, her undeniable spirit. The music guides us into a slower rhythm, our bodies moving side to side. The sway is like a lullaby, telling me everything will be okay if I just hold this precious woman close to me. I feel an instinct like no other I've felt before. Possessive, but also protective. I would kill for Emily, that much I know for certain. And I desire her more than all the power and money the world has to offer. And that desire could get us both killed. The question is, am I willing to risk everything, my empire, my revenge, my very life, for a woman who might run screaming when she discovers the truth? As Emily's head comes to rest hesitantly against my chest, her warmth seeping through my suit, I'm terrified to realize I already know the answer. Yes, God help me, but yes.
Chapter 8. Emily. My hands tremble as I stare at my reflection in the peninsula's bridal suite mirror. The wedding dress my mother chose is a masterpiece of silk and lace, floating around me like a cloud of ivory dreams, more beautiful than I could have imagined. But all I can focus on is my racing pulse, visible at the hollow of my throat. 10 minutes, my mother calls through the door, her voice high with nervous energy. Be ready, Emily. I close my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. This is just business, I remind myself. A contract signed in white silk instead of paper. Nothing more. So why does my stomach flutter every time I think of Artem waiting at the altar? A commotion outside breaks through my thoughts. Raised voices, the sharp click of heels on marble. Then my mother again, this time with an edge of panic. What do you mean the flowers are wrong? My eyes snap open. Through the door, I hear the wedding planner's harried explanation. Something about the wrong shade of roses, a delivery mix-up that threatens to delay the entire ceremony. It's a small thing, really, but after weeks of careful orchestration to make this arranged marriage look natural, any deviation feels catastrophic. I don't care what you have to do, my mother hisses. Fix it. Perhaps I can help. Artem's voice, deep and steady, cuts through the chaos like a blade. My heart skips at the sound, even through the heavy wood separating us. There's a moment of shocked silence. The groom isn't supposed to be anywhere near the bride before the ceremony, and then the rapid-fire click of retreating heels as my mother and the planner scatter. Emily. His voice is closer now, just on the other side of the door. Are you all right? I press my palm against the smooth wood, imagining I can feel his warmth through it. Shouldn't you be at the altar? It's bad luck to see the bride before the wedding. A low chuckle. I think we're beyond superstition, don't you? Besides, I'm not looking at you, just checking. Checking what? That you haven't climbed out the window. Despite everything, a laugh bubbles up in my throat. We're on the 3rd floor. You're resourceful. I wouldn't put it past you. The easy banter settles something in me, calms the riot of butterflies in my stomach. This is why I agreed to this madness. Not just for my family, but because something about Artem's presence grounds me even as it sets my blood on fire. The flowers are handled, he says after a moment. White peonies are being delivered as we speak. How did you— I have connections, and money makes everything move faster. Of course it does. Just like money bought him a bride when he needed citizenship. The thought should be bitter, but instead it just makes me sad. What kind of life has he led? Where everything and everyone has a price? Where love is something bought and sold instead of free and joyful? Thank you, I say softly. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. His voice drops lower, intimate. This day needs to be perfect, for appearances, if nothing else. Right, appearances. The story we're selling to the world, the whirlwind romance, the fairy tale wedding. Sometimes I almost believe it myself. 5 minutes! My mother's voice carries down the hall. I should go, Artem says. Try not to miss me too much, darling. Before I can form a retort, I hear his footsteps retreating. The loss of his presence leaves me oddly hollow and aching inside. The next few minutes pass in a blur of last-minute adjustments. Then suddenly I'm on my father's arm, the heavy doors swinging open to reveal a sea of faces turned expectantly toward me. But I only see one. Artem stands at the altar like something out of a dream, his black tuxedo emphasizing the breadth of his shoulders and the lean strength of his frame. His dark hair is swept back, revealing the sharp angles of his face. But it's his eyes that capture me, intense, possessive, burning into mine with an heat that makes my knees weak and my core flare with desire. Each step down the aisle feels like walking through molasses. Time slows, stretches, until there's nothing but the steady rhythm of my heartbeat and Artem's unwavering gaze. When I finally reach him, he takes my hand in his. His palm is warm, steadying, and I find myself clinging to that touch like an anchor in a storm. The priest begins to speak, but the words wash over me in a haze. All I can focus on is Artem's thumb tracing small circles on my wrist, the subtle caress sending shivers up my arm. It seems impossible that so little skin-to-skin contact would cause such a strong reaction. Then it's time for the vows. We chose traditional ones, safe and impersonal, but something shifts as Artem begins to speak. His voice drops to a register that seems meant for my ears alone, turning the standard phrases into something that feels dangerously close to promises. I, Artem, take you, Emily. The way he says my name makes my breath catch. To have and to hold from this day forward. His eyes never leave mine, and I see something flash in their depths. Hunger, possession, and something else I can't quite name. Something that makes my heart race and my skin flush. When it's my turn, I'm surprised to find my voice steady. I, Emily, take you, Artem. His fingers tighten on mine at the sound of his name on my lips. You may now kiss the bride. Time stops. Artem's free hand comes up to cup my cheek, his touch impossibly gentle for someone so strong and, at times, callous. He leans in slowly, giving me time to pull away if I want to. I don't want to. Not just because of the deal. I'm curious. His lips brush mine, soft and questioning at first. But when I lean into him, something snaps. The kiss deepens, turns hungry, and I forget about the hundreds of people watching. Forget this is supposed to be just for show. All I know is the heat of his mouth on mine, the solid warmth of his chest under my palms, the way his hand slides into my hair to angle my head just so. When we finally break apart, I'm breathless and trembling. Artem's eyes are dark with promise, and I know he felt it too. This is no longer just an arrangement. This is something far more dangerous, something with real heat and attraction that I'm not sure I'll be able to fight forever. The reception passes in a whirl of champagne and congratulations. Artem stays close, his hand a constant presence at the small of my back. He makes me laugh with whispered observations about the guests, steers me smoothly away from awkward conversations, anticipates my needs before I can voice them. Dance with me, he murmurs as the band strikes up a slow song. Just like at our engagement party, it's not really a request. This time, I don't even pretend to resist. He pulls me close, one hand spanning my waist while the other captures mine. We move together like we've been doing this for years, my body following his lead instinctively. "You're beautiful," he says softly, his lips brushing my ear. Every man in this room wishes he were me right now. I should remind him this isn't real, that he doesn't need to keep up the act when no one can hear us. Instead, I find myself asking, "And you? Do you wish you were somewhere else, or is this everything you dreamed it would be?" Artem pulls back just enough to meet my eyes, his expression intense. "This is it," he says simply. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be." The worst part is, I believe him. And as we turn across the dance floor, his strong arms holding me close, I can't help but wonder, what would it be like if this were real? If the heat between us wasn't just chemistry but something deeper? But that's a dangerous path to walk, because Artem Romanov is still a mystery, and I'm a woman with a life of my own to live. I was never meant to be a kept woman, and one day this will all be over. On the day we divorce, far faster and with less pretense than today. For now, though, I let myself sink into the fantasy. Just for today, just for this dance, I can pretend this is real. That the way he looks at me means something more than convenience and attraction. Tomorrow will come soon enough, with all its complications and questions. Tonight I'll take what I can get, even if it's just a beautiful lie.
Chapter 9. Artem. The morning sun beats down on the private terminal at LAX as I check my watch for the third time in as many minutes. My new wife is late, deliberately so if I had to guess, knowing what I do of Emily. A small act of defiance that shouldn't amuse me as much as it does. Victor shifts beside me, ever vigilant. "The perimeter is secure, sir. No suspicious activity." I nod, but something nags at the edge of my consciousness. Call it instinct or perhaps paranoia, though in my line of work the two are often indistinguishable. Still, this honeymoon needs to happen. The press expects it, and more importantly, it's a chance to get Emily away from prying eyes, to see what she's really made of. The terminal doors slide open, and my irritation at her tardiness evaporates at the sight of her. Emily saunters in like she owns the place, all long legs and casual elegance in a cream-colored traveling suit that hugs every curve. Oversized sunglasses hide her eyes, but I can read the challenge in the tilt of her chin, the deliberate slowness of her stride. "You're late," I say when she finally reaches us. "Am I?" She pushes her sunglasses up, revealing those remarkable green eyes. I must have lost track of time. Like hell she did. The jet's been waiting. "How inconsiderate of me," she drawls. "Keeping your very own plane waiting. However will you cope?" A chuckle builds in my chest, but I suppress it. "If you're quite finished being difficult..." "Oh, I'm just getting started." But she follows as I guide her toward the tarmac, my hand settling possessively at the small of her back. Movement catches my eye, a shadow among the support pillars, there and gone too quickly to track. My jaw tightens. Victor notices my tension and speaks rapidly into his calm, but I force myself to keep walking normally. No need to alarm Emily if it's nothing. But is it nothing? The hair on the back of my neck stands up, that predator's instinct that's kept me alive all these years screaming danger. Could Kazakov's men have tracked me here already? "Problem?" Emily asks, and I realize my grip on her waist has tightened. "Not at all." I force my fingers to relax. "Just eager to get you alone." She rolls her eyes, but I catch the slight hitch in her breath, the way her pulse jumps at my words. Good to know I'm not the only one affected by this chemistry between us. My jet waits on the tarmac, sleek and white against the California sky. Emily's step falters almost imperceptibly at the sight of it, her eyes widening behind those designer shades. But she recovers quickly, that practiced mask of indifference sliding back into place. I suppose it's too much to hope there's a normal-sized airplane hiding behind this monument to overcompensation heralding in a new era of climate change, she quips. I lean close, my lips brushing her ear. I assure you, darling, I have nothing to compensate for at all. A delicate shiver runs through her, and I smell the light floral scent of her perfume, feel the warmth of her skin through the thin silk of her jacket. The urge to push her up against the jet's gleaming hull and show her exactly how much I don't need to compensate for anything is almost overwhelming. Instead, I guide her up the stairs, enjoying the view as she climbs ahead of me. The suit pants she's wearing should be illegal. Inside, Emily surveys the luxurious cabin with carefully concealed interest. But I see the way her fingers trail over the butter-soft leather seats, how her eyes linger on the crystal decanters at the bar. Acceptable? I ask dryly. She shoots me a look that could freeze vodka. It'll do. Then, to my amusement, she chooses a seat as far from the one I've claimed as possible. The message is clear. Wife or not, she's maintaining her distance from me. I watch as she settles in, efficiently arranging her things. A cashmere travel blanket, her phone, and a book that makes me grin when I catch the title. The Russian's Revenge? I read aloud, noting the shirtless man on the cover with some amusement. I didn't take you for a romance reader. It's romantic suspense, she corrects primly, a flush creeping up her neck. There's a difference. Ah, yes, the difference being more creative ways to kill people between intimate scenes. Her blush deepens, but her chin lifts defiantly. Some of us enjoy a little danger with our happy endings. Is that so? I lean forward, enjoying the way her breath catches. Then you're in luck, Mrs. Romanov, because I can promise you plenty of danger. Something flashes in her eyes. Fear, excitement, before she breaks eye contact, fumbling in her bag for a face mask. Wake me when we land, she mumbles, effectively ending the conversation. I lean back in my seat, sipping the scotch Victor had waiting for me, and watch as she pretends to sleep. But I notice how her breathing never evens out, how her fingers clench slightly every time I shift in my seat. She's affected by me, whether she wants to admit it or not, just as I'm affected by her, this beautiful, sharp-tongued woman who challenges me at every turn, who makes me want things I have no business wanting. Through the window, I catch movement on the tarmac again. Another shadow, another glimpse that sets my instincts screaming. But we're already taxiing, and my security team has swept the area thoroughly. Still, I make a mental note to have Victor double-check our destination's security. Because if my enemies have found me, if they've tracked Voron to his California hideout, then Emily isn't just my convenient bride anymore. She's a potential target. The thought makes something dark and possessive rear up in my chest. I've only had her for a day, but already the idea of anyone threatening her makes me want to burn the world down. I study her profile as we take off, the way the sunlight streaming through the window sets her auburn hair ablaze. She's trying so hard to maintain her distance, to treat this as the business arrangement it's supposed to be. But I've seen the way she melted into our wedding kiss, felt how she trembled in my arms during our first dance. This honeymoon is going to be interesting, because while Emily might think she can keep her walls up, I've made a career out of breaking through defenses, and I intend to enjoy every minute of dismantling hers. Let her play hard to get. Let her pretend she's immune to the heat between us. We both know it's only a matter of time before she surrenders to this chemistry. And when she does, well, that's when the real danger begins. Because the more I'm around her, the more I want her. Not just her body, but her fire, her spirit, her everything. And a man like me can't afford to want anything that much. It makes you vulnerable. It makes you weak. It makes you human.
Chapter 10. Emily. Celaya rises from the turquoise sea like something out of a dream, the morning sun turning the water into a carpet of diamonds. Our private yacht cuts smoothly through the waves, and I grip the railing, overwhelmed by the sheer beauty before us. Pristine white sand beaches curve in a perfect crescent, embracing a lagoon so clear I can see tropical fish darting beneath the surface. Palm trees sway in the warm breeze, their fronds casting dancing shadows on the crystalline water. Behind the beach, lush gardens climb gently sloping hills, bursting with flowers and colors I've never seen before. And nestled among all this natural splendor, I spot what must be our bungalow, a masterpiece of glass and wood that somehow manages to look both imposing and perfectly at home in its surroundings. It's exactly the kind of over-the-top paradise I'd expect from Artem, though I keep my expression carefully neutral. No need to let him know how taken I am with it all. The man's ego is large enough already. Not impressed? Artem's voice carries that hint of amusement that never fails to get under my skin. His hand appears at my elbow as we approach the private pier, steadying me as the boat rocks gently. Despite the heat, his touch sends a shiver down my spine. It's fine, I say with practiced indifference, though my heart races at the sheer beauty surrounding us. A pair of exotic birds takes flight from a nearby palm, their wings flashing brilliant blue against the cloudless sky. I suppose when you're compensating for something, bigger is always better. His low chuckle rumbles through me, his chest close enough to my back that I feel the vibration. You seem very preoccupied with what I might be compensating for, darling. Curious? I yank my arm from his grip, cheeks burning. The way he says that word, darling, makes something flutter low in my belly. You wish. The pier creaks softly under our feet as we make our way to shore. Artem's security team moves ahead of us with practiced efficiency, melting into the lush foliage that lines the winding path to our bungalow. They're trying to be discreet, but I spot at least 4 men positioned strategically along the route. Why does a businessman, even a wealthy one, need so much protection on a private island? The path curves through gardens that would make Eden jealous. Plumeria and jasmine scent the air so heavily, I feel almost drunk on it. Orchids in impossible shades peek from between broad-leafed plants, and I fight the urge to stop and examine each new flower we pass. My fingers itch for my sketchbook. These colors would make amazing inspiration for my next design project, if I still have a design career after this marriage of convenience. The thought sobers me, reminding me why I'm really here. This isn't a romantic honeymoon getaway. It's a business transaction, nothing more and nothing less. I can't let myself get carried away by the whirlwind of it all. The bungalow reveals itself gradually as we climb the gentle slope. Each step brings new details into focus, the way the morning sun plays off vast expanses of glass, the elegant sweep of the roof designed to echo the waves below, the private infinity pool that seems to merge with the ocean beyond. It's stunning in a way that makes my artistic soul ache. Inside, the space opens up like a shell revealing its pearl. Soaring ceilings and panoramic windows bring the ocean view inside, while Balinese-inspired architecture creates intimate spaces within the grandeur. The furniture is a perfect mix of modern luxury and island comfort. Plush sofas and natural linens, hand-carved tables that probably cost more than my old apartment's yearly rent, art pieces that make my fingers twitch with appreciation. I catch Artem watching me, that irritating satisfaction gleaming in his dark eyes. He's rolled his sleeves up in deference to the heat, and the sight of his muscular forearms is unfairly distracting. The master suite is through there. He gestures to the left, then points right. And the guest room is on the opposite side. Relief floods through me at the word guest. Separate bedrooms? Of course. His lips curl into that infuriating smirk. I wouldn't bring you somewhere we'd have to share a room. I don't need to force attraction. This isn't my first time with a woman. The words hit like a slap, though I refuse to let him see how they sting. Each syllable drives home what I am to him, a convenience, nothing more. Not that I want to be anything else. Not that I care about the other women he's brought to this paradise, no matter how beautiful they may have been. How considerate, I manage, keeping my voice light even as something sharp and painful twists in my chest. Though I'm surprised you didn't just install a revolving door in your bedroom. Much more efficient for all that entertaining. Something dangerous flashes in his eyes, a glimpse of the predator beneath the polished businessman facade. But I'm already moving toward the guest room, my heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. Let him think his barb landed. Let him think I care about his past conquests. The guest room is as luxurious as the rest of the bungalow, with a king-size bed draped in crisp white linens and fluffed-up down-filled pillows, all of it screaming with subtle wealth. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcase a private view of the beach, gauzy curtains stirring in the ocean breeze. It's the kind of room I'd normally spend hours photographing for my design portfolio. I begin unpacking methodically, trying to focus on the task rather than Artem's cutting words or the unwelcome ache they left in my chest. Each item of clothing goes into its assigned place. Swimming suits in the top drawer, casual wear in the middle, evening clothes hanging in the cedar-scented closet. The dresser drawers slide open silently on expensive hardware, everything here engineered for perfect luxury. I'm placing my carefully folded bikinis in the top drawer when something catches my eye in the back corner, a flash of black leather partially hidden under silk scarves. Curiosity wars with common sense. This isn't my room, not really. These aren't my things to investigate, but something about that glimpse of leather calls to me, and before I can stop myself, I'm reaching in. My fingers brush silk as I push aside the scarves, and then I freeze. Rope. Not the rough kind you'd find on a boat, but smooth, obviously expensive cord that looks well used. The kind of rope I've only ever read about in my spicier novels. And beneath it, handcuffs. Not police-issue steel, but padded leather with silver buckles that gleam in the sunlight streaming through the windows. There's more. Silk blindfolds in various colors, what looks like a riding crop. Other items I'm afraid to examine too closely. Heat floods my face as my mind helpfully supplies images of how Artem might have used these items with those other women he's entertained. The thought sends an unwelcome thrill through me, followed immediately by embarrassment. I slam the drawer shut, my heart pounding against my ribs. Focus, Emily. You're here for one reason only, and it's not to discover your new husband's suggestive proclivities. Not to imagine those strong hands wielding that rope, those intense eyes watching as... No. Absolutely not. I change quickly into a white bikini, the one Chloe insisted I pack because it makes me look like a goddess. The material is expensive, the cut both elegant and provocative. A sheer cover-up adds a whisper of modesty, though not much. When I step into the hall, I find Artem has shed his suit jacket and rolled up the sleeves of his crisp white shirt even further. The sight of those muscular forearms, dusted with dark hair, shouldn't affect me the way it does. His eyes land on me, and something hot and predatory flashes in their depths before he masks it. Satisfaction blooms in my chest at his reaction. Let him think about what he's missing with his separate bedrooms arrangement. I'll be on the beach for the rest of the afternoon, I say coolly, making sure to brush past him close enough that he catches the coconut scent of my sunscreen. Close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body, to catch the spicy scent of his cologne. The beach is paradise, the sand like warm silk between my toes. I find a perfect spot and spread my towel, far enough from the water to stay dry but close enough to feel the ocean breeze. The sun beats down and I close my eyes, trying to relax. But my mind keeps drifting to that drawer, to the implications of its contents. I've read enough spicy novels to know what those items are for, but the reality of them, and the image of Artem using them, sends heat pooling low in my belly. I imagine those ropes against my skin, his strong hands. Get it together, I mutter to myself, shifting restlessly on the towel. He's probably just trying to shock you. Game recognizes game. After a while, I realize I should check in with Chloe. She made me promise to send photos of the island. The thought of my sister sobers me. She'd been so excited about my romantic honeymoon, completely unaware that her own housing hangs in the balance of this arrangement. But my phone isn't in my beach bag. With a sigh, I remember leaving it on the nightstand while unpacking, right next to that drawer of secrets. I push myself up from the towel, brushing sand from my legs. It's just a quick trip back to the room. No need to think about what else is in that drawer, or why the memory of Artem's heated gaze makes my skin tingle. No need to think about any of it at all.
Chapter 11. Artem. I shift uncomfortably in my desk chair, a glass of scotch half forgotten in my hand. The image of Emily in that white bikini refuses to leave my mind. Perfect skin and elegant curves, that defiant tilt to her chin as she'd brushed past me. The memory of coconut sunscreen and warm skin makes my fingers itch to touch, to claim. Over and over again, her elegant figure has danced through my mind. driving me to insanity faster than the most powerful drug. I've encountered many captivating sights during my years on this earth, but none quite like Emily. This wasn't part of the plan. She was supposed to be a convenient solution, American citizenship through marriage, nothing more. But from the moment she challenged me at the gala, something about her has gotten under my skin. Not just her beauty, but her spirit and defiance, which rival that of most of the men I've met in my line of work. Focus, I growl to myself, loosening my tie. The bungalow's air conditioning fights a losing battle against the tropical heat. Or maybe it's just the effect Emily has on my usually icy control. Through the window I can still see her on the beach, the sun turning her auburn hair to living flame. Emily has shifted position on her towel. The movement causes her cover-up to slide higher, revealing an expanse of toned thigh that makes my mouth go dry. I reach for my phone, needing a distraction from thoughts of my new wife stretched out on the sand in that scrap of white fabric. The idea of anyone else seeing and feeling what I do is enough to make my blood boil. But with what? Fury or passion? I dial Victor and he answers on the first ring. The perimeter is secure, he reports before I can ask. Final security sweeps are complete, and the last staff members arrive within the hour. I put the call on speaker as I open my laptop, forcing myself to focus on business. Any signs of surveillance? Anyone following our arrival? Nothing concrete, but... Victor hesitates. There was some unusual activity at the mainland marina before we departed. Could be nothing. Or it could be Kazakov's men. I pull up the security feeds, checking the camera positions myself. Double the patrols. I want eyes on every approach to this island. We can't afford to leave any openings. Already done. Papers rustle on Victor's end. We should discuss the investment plans. The shell companies are in place, but we need to move quickly to establish legitimate holdings before anyone connects them to Voron. The name sends a chill down my spine. Even here in paradise. How many people have whispered that name in fear? How many lives has Voron ended or destroyed? Now those same people are hunting shadows while I hide in plain sight, playing the wealthy businessman. This little fantasy has its benefits, but the tyrant inside of me won't allow it for much longer. Sooner or later, the beast will hunt again, reclaiming the jungle he left behind. The Belmont marriage helps, Victor continues. No one would expect Voron to put himself so publicly in the spotlight. But we need to be careful. One slip, one whispered rumor. I know, so stop talking about it. You never know who could be listening. Nobody should have the opportunity to discover that I'm Voron, I growl. Right, sorry. Start transferring the Moscow accounts, I manage, forcing a calmer voice. Small amounts, spread through different... A soft gasp cuts through the room like a blade. I look up sharply, my heart stopping at the sight of Emily frozen in the doorway. Her eyes are wide with shock, her face pale despite the sun-kissed glow from her time on the beach. The white bikini is still devastatingly visible beneath her sheer cover-up, the fabric clinging to damp skin in ways that make it hard to think straight. My stomach drops, and the sickening feeling of guilt builds in my throat like bile. What did she hear from the conversation? How long has she been standing in the doorway without me knowing? Victor, I say quietly. We'll continue this later. I end the call, silence settling heavy in the room. Emily stands perfectly still, like a deer sensing danger, and I drink in the sight of her. All long legs and graceful curves, strength wrapped in silk. Even with fear flickering in those remarkable eyes, she's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And that's going to be a problem. Because the look of shocked recognition on her face tells me she heard more than she should have. And now I have to decide what to do about it.
Chapter 12. Emily. My blood roars in my ears as I stare at Artem, the pieces clicking into horrible place. Voron, the mysterious Russian crime boss whose disappearance has dominated international news. The man whispered about in terrified tones, known for his ruthless control of the Bratva. Standing right in front of me, my husband. Emily. Artem's voice is soft, almost gentle, but I see the dangerous man lurking behind his careful expression. I should have seen it all along. Let me explain. I back away until cool plaster presses against my spine. The wall feels solid, real, when everything else seems to be crumbling around me. Explain what? That I married a murderer? A criminal? He moves closer, each step measured and graceful. Even now, knowing what he is, I can't help but respond to his presence. My skin prickles with awareness, heart racing for reasons that have nothing to do with fear, or at least not only fear. Things aren't always what they seem, he says, close enough now that I catch the spicy scent of his cologne. The world isn't as black and white as you think. No? My voice shakes slightly. Then tell me, what shade of gray justifies whatever it is you do? His eyes darken, and something dangerous flashes across his face. But there's tenderness there too, in the way he braces one hand against the wall beside my head, caging me in without actually touching. The shade that keeps people alive, that protects what's mine. Heat floods my body at the possessive note in his voice. I should be running, should be screaming for help. Instead, I'm hypnotized by the intensity of his gaze, the coiled power in his frame. And is that what I am? I whisper. Something that's yours? His free hand comes up to trace my cheek, the touch feather light but sending electricity sparking through my veins. You're my wife. By convenience only, I remind him, but the words lack conviction. Not when he's looking at me like he wants to devour me whole. It's just a business deal, right? Nothing more. A knock at the door shatters the moment. Artem steps back smoothly as a uniformed server enters pushing a cart, the perfect picture of a wealthy businessman rather than a feared mafia boss. But I see now what I missed before, the lethal grace in his movements, the way his eyes track every potential threat. The server begins setting up lunch on the small dining table, the clink of fine china seeming absurdly normal after what I've just learned. But something feels off. The man's movements are too precise, his attention too focused on me despite my still damp bikini and cover-up. When his gaze lingers a beat too long on my exposed legs, Artem shifts slightly, placing himself between us. The movement seems casual, but I catch the tension in his shoulders. Silverware gleams as the server arranges place settings with mechanical efficiency. Then I see it, the way his hand lingers on the knife, testing its edge with a touch too knowing to be innocent. Artem! I shout, but he's already moving. The server lunges with inhuman speed, knife flashing in the tropical sunlight streaming through the windows. Artem blocks the strike, catching the man's wrist, but the momentum sends them crashing into the table. Fine china shatters, water glasses exploding across the floor. I scramble back behind the kitchen island, my heart thundering against my ribs. The two men grapple with deadly intensity, each movement precise and brutal. This is no random attack. The server fights with trained skill, matching Artem blow for blow. A glint of steel catches my eye. Another knife, this one from our scattered lunch setting. Without thinking, I grab it and slide it across the floor toward Artem. But the movement catches our attacker's attention. His boot connects with Artem's chest, sending my husband sprawling among the broken dishes. The man turns toward me, a cold smile curving his lips. Blood drips from a cut on his cheek, where Artem landed a blow. The boss sends his regards, he says in heavily accented English. Terror freezes me in place as he advances. This is how I die, on my honeymoon, at the hands of someone hunting my criminal husband. What a joke. But then Artem is there, moving with lethal grace. One moment the attacker is reaching for me. The next he's flying backward as Artem strikes. There's a blur of movement, a spray of crimson, and suddenly everything goes still. The attacker's body crumples at my feet, lifeless eyes staring at nothing. Artem stands over him, breathing heavily, blood seeping through his white shirt where the knife caught him. Are you hurt? He demands, eyes scanning me frantically. I shake my head, unable to form words. My legs give out and I sink to the floor, narrowly missing a puddle of something I refuse to identify. Artem kneels before me, hands hovering like he wants to touch but isn't sure of his welcome. Emily, look at me. I do, and what I see steals my breath. Gone is the polished businessman, the careful mask he always wears. This is Varan, dangerous, lethal, and yet looking at me with such naked concern that my heart twists. "You're bleeding," I manage, reaching for the growing stain on his shirt. He catches my hand, pressing a kiss to my palm that feels like a brand. "It's nothing. I just want to make sure you're safe." I look down at myself, double-checking to make sure I haven't sustained any wounds that my adrenaline is hiding from me. There doesn't appear to be any. "I'm fine," I say, trying to sound confident. "Who was that?" "Someone who won't be missed." Artem's voice is cold, reminding me again of what he is, what he's capable of. The dead man at our feet is proof enough of that. And yet, he'd put himself between me and danger without hesitation, had taken a knife to protect me. The man everyone fears had looked at me with such tenderness, even as he prepared to kill. "This is what you were trying to protect me from," I say quietly. "When you said the less I knew, the safer I'd be." His jaw tightens. "Yes. But I'm not safe, am I?" "Not really. Not as long as I'm married to—" I wave vaguely at the carnage surrounding us. "No one will touch you," he growls, and the possession in his voice makes me shiver. "I won't allow it." "How can you promise that?" I try to sound angry, but it comes out more like a plea. "You're Voron, the most feared man in the Russian underworld. Everyone wants you dead." "Let them try." His thumb traces my cheekbone, leaving a smear of something I don't want to think about. "I protect what's mine, Emily. And like it or not, you're mine now." I should argue, should tell him our marriage is just convenience, that I'm not his anything. But with adrenaline still coursing through my veins and his touch burning against my skin, I can't form the words. Because deep down, in a place I'm afraid to examine too closely, I think I want to be his. God help me, but I do.
Chapter 13. Artem. "Sir," Victor murmurs at my shoulder, his voice professionally detached despite the carnage surrounding us. "We need to handle this quickly." I barely hear him, my attention fixed on Emily. She's still on the floor, those remarkable green eyes wide as they dart between me and the body sprawled across our pristine marble. The white bikini she'd tormented me with earlier is now spattered with crimson droplets, a stark reminder of how close I came to losing her. Just the thought makes something primal and possessive rear up in my chest. She's handling this better than most hardened criminals I know. Chin lifted defiantly despite her trembling hands, mind clearly working behind those expressive eyes. Even now, faced with irrefutable proof of what I am, she shows more curiosity than fear. It's intriguing, dangerous. "Call the cleanup crew," I order, not taking my eyes off my wife. "And get me a secure line to Moscow. I want to know who sent him." My shirt is soaked through, blood mixing with sweat in a way that's unfortunately familiar. The knife wound burns, but I've had worse. Much worse. Though usually not while trying to convince my new bride I'm not actually the monster she clearly thinks I am. Not that I can blame her. We're surrounded by broken crystal and scattered rose petals from our overturned lunch, the romantic setting turned crime scene in moments. Some honeymoon. "You're still bleeding," Emily says suddenly, pushing herself to her feet with admirable steadiness. For someone who just witnessed her first murder, her voice carries surprising authority. "Sit down before you pass out and really ruin my day, and tell me where the first aid kit is." I blink, caught off guard by the steel in her tone. It shouldn't be attractive, her ordering me around like this. I'm Voron, feared leader of the Bratva. Men tremble at my name. And yet, I'm fine. You were stabbed. It's just a scratch. I motion to a cabinet. First aid kit is there. "Men," she mutters, moving toward the first aid kit I keep stocked in every room. The sway of her hips is hypnotic even now. "Why do you all have to be so macho about everything? Just sit down and let me look at it." I should refuse. Should maintain professional distance while Victor handles containment and security sweeps the perimeter. But something about the way she says it, exasperated but concerned, makes me comply. Or maybe it's just the prospect of her hands on my skin. She makes me remove my ruined shirt, and I don't miss the way her breath catches at the sight of my bare chest. Her fingers tremble slightly as she cleans the wound, but her touch is sure and gentle. Professional, until it isn't. "Thank you for saving me," she murmurs, rare gratitude in her tone. "I mean it." I wave her words off with a dry chuckle, hiding a wince as she touches my wound. "It was a lapse in judgment. Besides, you looked like easy prey in that bikini." Her eyes flash. "That's not what you said earlier." I smirk at her. What can I say? I lied. My smirk quickly falters as she cleans out my wound a little too vigorously. I suppose that's how she gets her revenge on me. "This needs stitches," she announces, fingertips straying to trace an old scar near my collarbone. The casual intimacy of the touch sends heat spiraling through me. "Please tell me you have a sketchy doctor on speed dial because I'm not explaining this to the local hospital." A laugh rumbles in my chest before I can stop it. "You're taking this very calmly." "Oh, I'm definitely having a breakdown later," she assures me, pressing a clean bandage to my side. Her palm is warm against my skin, grounding me in a way I don't want to examine too closely. Probably involving several bottles of wine and some serious therapy bills. But right now, she meets my eyes, and I see the same fire that first drew me to her, burning even brighter now. Right now, I want answers. "Emily, no." She cuts me off, pressing slightly harder than necessary on the bandage. The flash of pain is nothing compared to the electricity that arcs between us when she leans closer. "You don't get to Emily me in that condescending tone. Someone just tried to kill you. To kill us. In our honeymoon bungalow. I think I've earned some truth." "Amen." She's right, of course, but the truth could get her killed. Just being associated with me puts a target on her back. Knowing the full extent of who and what I am would only make her more vulnerable. Yet watching her now, competent and fierce, blood on her skin but steel in her spine, I can't help but wonder if I've underestimated her strength. "The less you know," I start, but she cuts me off again. "The safer I'll be?" Her laugh is sharp, but her hands remain gentle as she secures the bandage. "I think we're past that, don't you? There's a dead assassin on our floor. I'm pretty sure the safe ship has sailed." Before I can respond, Victor returns with the cleanup team. They move with practiced efficiency, wrapping the body and beginning to scrub the marble. Emily watches it all with an expression I can't quite read, but I notice she doesn't flinch away from the reality of what's happening. "Your enemies," she says finally, still methodically cleaning around the edges of my wound. Her touch is maddening, professional one moment, almost caressing the next. "They're not just business rivals, are they?" "No. There's no point denying it now. Not when she's literally helping patch up the evidence of what I am." "And you're not just some wealthy Russian expatriate?" "No." Her hand's still on my skin, and I have to fight not to lean into her touch. "Are you going to tell me who you really are?" I study her face, searching for signs of fear or revulsion, but all I see is determination. And something else. Something that looks dangerously like desire. Her pupils are dilated, cheeks flushed, and not just from the adrenaline of the fight. "You don't want to know," I say quietly, reaching up to brush a strand of hair from her face. She leans into the touch instinctively, and something in my chest tightens. "Pretty sure I do." Her fingers trace the edge of the bandage, then drift higher, mapping the topography of scars across my chest. "After all, I did just help you hide a body. I think that makes me an accessory." Despite everything, the danger, the blood, the complications this will cause, I find myself fighting a smile. Because of course Emily Belmont would face down the revelation that she married a crime lord with sarcasm and surprising competence. With gentle hands and fierce eyes, and a strength that makes me want things I have no business wanting. "You're remarkable," I murmur without meaning to, catching her wandering hands in mine. "And far too good for the likes of me." Her breath catches, but there's a challenge in her eyes. Shouldn't I be the judge of that? "You don't know what I am." "Then tell me." She leans closer, until I can count the gold flecks in her eyes, Smell the coconut sunscreen on her skin beneath the metallic tang of blood. Stop trying to protect me and let me decide for myself what I can handle. The space between us crackles with tension. Yes, but something more too. Something dangerous and addictive, like the first taste of a drug you know will destroy you. Her eyes flick down to my lips, and that's all the permission I need to engulf her mouth in mine. Emily tastes fresh, innocent, naive, and intoxicating. I sink into the moment, admitting to myself that she has me at her beck and call. But before I can decide how much to tell her, how many of my secrets to spill, there's a sharp knock on the door, just before it opens to reveal my bodyguards. Victor clears his throat. "Sir, Moscow is on the line." Reality crashes back in. I have an empire to protect, enemies to handle, an identity to maintain. And now I have a wife who's seen too much. A wife I'm becoming dangerously attached to. A wife who makes me want to be better than I am, even as she accepts the monster I've become. "We'll finish this discussion later," I tell her, rising carefully to avoid pulling at the wound. Her hands fall away reluctantly, leaving ghost impressions of warmth on my skin. "Promise?" The challenge in her voice makes heat pool low in my gut. I catch her chin between my thumb and forefinger, tilting her face up to mine. "You should be running from me," I murmur, studying the way her pulse jumps beneath my touch, how she licks the memory of our kiss from her lips. Her pupils dilate further, but her voice is steady. "Probably. But I'm not very good at doing what I should. God help me, but that only makes me want her more. This fierce, beautiful woman who faces down killers without flinching, who patches up the monster and demands to know his secrets, who looks at me like I'm something worth saving, even with blood on my hands. Go clean up," I tell her roughly, before I can do something stupid like kiss her senseless right here in front of my security team. "We'll talk after I handle this." She nods but pauses at the door. "Just don't lie to me anymore, okay? Whatever this is, whatever you are, I'd rather know the truth." The words hit harder than any knife, because the truth could destroy her, could paint an even bigger target on her back. But watching her walk away, head held high despite everything she's seen, I realize I'm running out of reasons to keep her in the dark. Or maybe I'm just running out of willpower to resist her. Either way, I know one thing for certain. Emily Belmont is going to be either my salvation or my destruction. And God help me. But I'm starting to think she might be worth the risk.
Chapter 14. Emily. The bathroom is filled with steam, the air thick and heavy as I step out of the shower. I pull my silk robe tightly around me, but it does little to ward off the tremor in my hands or the way my heart pounds erratically in my chest. I'm still shaking, though whether it's from the cold or the adrenaline, I can't tell. The events of the night replay in my mind on an endless loop, the gleam of the knife, the blood, and Artem. Artem. I close my eyes, exhaling shakily as I press my back against the cool tile wall. The hot water had washed away the blood on my skin, but it hadn't touched the memory of him. The way he moved, like a predator on the hunt, every motion precise and lethal. He had killed for me tonight, and he'd done it without hesitation, without mercy. And yet, there had been mercy in his touch afterward, in the way he'd pulled me close, shielding me from the aftermath of the violence as though I was something precious. I can't shake the memory of the passion in his kiss, the skill of his lips on mine, and the intoxicating rush of feeling how much he wants me. That dichotomy, the ruthless killer and the man who had looked at me with such tenderness, makes my head spin. I press my palm to my chest, trying to calm the chaotic beating of my heart, but it doesn't help. The trembling doesn't stop. A sharp knock at the door startles me, and my eyes fly open. My first instinct is to ignore it, but another knock follows, more insistent this time. "Emily." His voice is low, muffled by the door, but it's unmistakably him. Artem. I hesitate for a moment before pushing off from the wall and crossing the room. My fingers tremble as I unlock and open the door. He's standing there, freshly showered, his dark sleep pants slung low on his hips and his torso wrapped in clean white bandages. The sight sends a jolt through me, a stark reminder of the knife wound he'd taken for me. His face is unreadable, but his eyes are darker than I've ever seen them, shadows swirling in their depths. "We leave at dawn," he says without preamble, his voice rough like gravel scraping against steel. "It's not safe to stay here." I nod, swallowing hard. I understand. He hesitates, his gaze flicking over me before softening ever so slightly. "I'm sorry," he adds, his voice quieter now. "This isn't how I wanted our honeymoon to go." The unexpected gentleness in his tone makes something ache deep in my chest. "It's okay," I say softly, and I mean it. He's alive, that's all that matters. He starts to turn away, but I can't let him go. Not yet. Not when the thought of being alone in this room, in this moment, feels unbearable. Before I can think better of it, my fingers reach out and catch his wrist. "Wait!" He stops, turning back to me, his dark brow arching in question. "What is it?" I take a deep breath, willing my voice not to shake. I don't want to be alone tonight," I admit, my words barely above a whisper. I'm still too shaken. For a moment, he just looks at me, his expression unreadable. The silence stretches between us, thick and heavy, until he finally speaks. "Do you need company?" he asks, his voice softer now, cautious. I nod. I can't bring myself to say the words, to admit how much I need him right now. Not just his presence, but him. He steps into the room, closing the door behind him with a soft click. The air seems to shift with his presence, the space suddenly feeling smaller, more charged. "You need to understand something," he says, his tone dark and serious. "I'm not a safe man, Emily. You've seen what I am, what I'm capable of." "I don't mind dangerous," I whisper, surprising even myself with the quiet conviction in my voice. "It would actually make me feel better. Sometimes it's better to sleep with a bear to protect yourself from the wolves." For a moment, he doesn't move, doesn't speak. Then slowly, he steps closer, his tall frame towering over mine. His hand lifts, his thumb brushing lightly over my lower lip, and the simple touch sends a shiver racing through me. "Are you sure you won't regret it?" His voice is low, teasing, but there's a dangerous edge to it, a warning. "I won't regret it," I say, my voice trembling but sure. A dark smile curves his lips, and his eyes gleam with something greedy. "Careful, Devochka," he murmurs, his accent thickening. "You might not know what you're asking for. I'm into some spicy things. Things you may not be strong enough to handle."
The following scene is too spicy for this version on YouTube. You can find the uncensored version on bellakingbooks.com or by following the link in the description. Thank you. Chapter 15. Artem. The morning sun leaks through the gauzy curtains, painting golden stripes across Emily's bare shoulders as she sleeps beside me. Her auburn hair spills across my chest like liquid fire, and the peaceful rise and fall of her breath stirs something protective deep in my chest. For a man used to waking with one eye open, always alert for the next threat, this moment of tranquility feels like a gift I don't deserve. I trace my fingers along the curve of her spine, memorizing the silk of her skin, the way she unconsciously curves closer to my touch even in sleep. Last night changed everything between us. Not just the heat of our passion, but the way she'd faced down the truth of what I am without flinching. The way she'd tended my wounds with gentle hands, even as she demanded answers with that fierce spirit that first drew me to her. She stirs, those remarkable green eyes fluttering open. For a moment, she just looks at me, and I brace myself for regret, for the reality of what happened to hit her. But instead, her lips curve into a slow smile that makes my chest tight. "You're still here," she murmurs, voice husky with sleep. "Where else would I be?" I brush a strand of hair from her face, letting my fingers linger on her cheek. This is my bed, after all. She rolls her eyes but doesn't pull away from my touch. "Ever the romantic?" Romance isn't exactly my specialty, Devochka. No? She props herself up on one elbow, the sheet sliding down to reveal tempting glimpses of bare skin. Then what is your specialty, Mr. Romanov? The playful challenge in her voice stirs something primal in me. Before she can blink, I roll us over, pinning her beneath me. Her breath catches as I capture her wrists in one hand, holding them above her head. Protection, I growl, nipping at her throat. Possession. My free hand slides down her side, making her shiver, making sure what's mine stays mine. Is that what I am? She asks, but there's no fear in her voice, only heat. Something that belongs to you? You know you are. I release her wrists to cup her face, forcing her to meet my gaze. After last night, there's no going back. You're mine, Emily, in every way that matters. She should argue, should remind me this marriage is just convenience, that we're both playing parts. Instead, she reaches up to trace the line of my jaw, her touch impossibly tender. Then you're mine too, she says softly. The good and the bad, the businessman and the other one. Voron. She still can't quite say it, but she doesn't have to. We both know what I am now. You don't know what you're asking for, I warn her, even as I lean into her touch. The things I've done. I know enough. Her other hand finds the bandage on my side, where I took the knife meant for her. I know you protected me, that you'd do it again. Always. The word comes out rougher than intended. But my world is dangerous, Emily. Last night proved that. If anything happened to you... She silences me with a kiss, soft but insistent. When she pulls back, there's that familiar stubborn tilt to her chin that makes me want to kiss her senseless. Then teach me, she says. Stop trying to protect me by keeping me in the dark. Show me how to survive in your world. The request hits me like a physical blow, because part of me wants exactly that, wants to shape her into someone who can stand beside me, who knows all my shadows and isn't afraid. But the rest of me recoils at the thought of tainting her with my darkness. Let me up, she says suddenly. I'm starving and I want coffee. I release her reluctantly, watching as she slides from the bed. She's absolutely shameless as she walks naked to where her robe puddles on the floor, giving me an excellent view of the marks I left on her skin last night. My possessive satisfaction must show on my face because she shoots me a knowing look over her shoulder. Like what you see. You know I do. I rise to follow her, not bothering with clothes. But you're playing a dangerous game, teasing me like this. She laughs, a bright sound that seems impossible in the wake of last night's violence. Maybe I like dangerous. She belts the robe loosely around her waist, leaving far too much skin exposed. Now, are you going to feed me, or do I have to fend for myself? 20 minutes later, I've managed to throw on sleep pants and whip up a proper breakfast of eggs, bacon, and fresh coffee. Emily perches on a bar stool at the kitchen counter, watching me cook with undisguised interest. She's stolen one of my dress shirts, the white fabric nearly translucent in the morning light, and the sight of her in my clothes does things to my control. I didn't know you could cook, she says, accepting a plate of eggs and fresh fruit. There's a lot you don't know about me. I pour us both coffee, doctoring hers with cream and sugar the way I've noticed she likes it. But I'm beginning to think that needs to change. Her eyes widen slightly at the admission. Really? No more mysterious crime lord routine? Watch it, I warn, but there's no heat in it. Not when she's looking at me like that, all sleep-mussed hair and kiss-swollen lips, her body ripe for another taking. I'm still dangerous. She takes a sip of coffee, watching me over the rim of her cup. Says the man who just made me the perfect breakfast and remembered exactly how I take my coffee. Don't get used to it. We leave in an hour. Her playful expression sobers. Right. Because someone tried to kill you. Us. This island isn't safe anymore. I lean across the counter, brushing my thumb across her lower lip. But I'll keep you safe, Emily. No matter what it takes. I know you will. She catches my hand, pressing a kiss to my palm that feels like a brand. But who keeps you safe? The question catches me off guard. In my world, there is no safety, only power and the constant vigilance needed to maintain it. But looking at Emily now, at the genuine concern in her eyes, I find myself wanting something I've never dared want before. A partner. Someone to share not just my bed but my burdens. Someone who sees both the man and the monster and chooses to stay anyway. Before I can answer, my phone buzzes with an incoming message. I check it reflexively, years of training making it impossible to ignore. My blood runs cold as I read Victor's report. New intel about a mole in my organization, someone feeding information to my enemies, someone who knows about Emily. Artem. Her voice pulls me back to the present. What's wrong? I look at her, this fierce, beautiful woman who trusted me with her body and her heart last night, who's begun to carve out a place in my life I never meant to give her. And I realize with bone-deep certainty that I'll do anything to keep her safe, even if it means becoming the monster everyone fears I am. Nothing, I lie, reaching for her hand. Just business. Finish your breakfast, Devochka. We have a long day ahead. She studies my face, and I know she doesn't believe me. But she lets it go, turning back to her food with only a slight furrow between her brows. I watch her eat, memorizing every detail of this peaceful moment, because soon enough I'll have to unleash Voron again. And this time, there will be no mercy for those who dare threaten what's mine.
Chapter 16. Emily. The wrought iron gates part silently as our car glides through, revealing Artem's mansion for the first time. My breath catches in my throat. Photos couldn't have prepared me for the sheer grandeur of it. A masterpiece of modern architecture spread across what must be acres of manicured grounds. The late afternoon sun catches on endless walls of glass, making the whole structure shimmer like a mirage. Welcome home. Artem murmurs beside me, his hand warm on my knee. Home. The word echoes strangely in my mind as we pull up to the main entrance. This palace of marble and glass couldn't be further from my cozy beachside apartment with its collection of mismatched furniture and walls covered in my artwork. Yet something about the way Artem says it, the gentle squeeze of his fingers against my leg, makes my heart flutter traitorously. Security personnel materialize as we exit the car, their dark suits and earpieces a reminder that this is no ordinary home. I count at least 6 of them stationed just in the immediate vicinity, their watchful eyes scanning constantly for threats. Is all this really necessary? I ask, as Artem guides me up the sweeping stairs, his hand possessive at the small of my back. Yes. His voice brooks no argument. After what happened on our honeymoon, I'm not taking any chances with your safety. I want to protest that I can take care of myself, but the memory of the assassin's cold eyes stops me. Instead, I let Artem lead me through massive double doors into an entrance hall that takes my breath away all over again. A crystal chandelier larger than my old living room cascades from the soaring ceiling, casting rainbow prisms across marble floors polished to a mirror shine. A grand staircase curves upward like something from a fairy tale, its wrought iron railings intricate works of art in themselves. Everything speaks of old money and refined taste, exactly the kind of place I never thought I'd call home. This way, Artem says, steering me past priceless artwork and antiques that would make my art history professors weep. I want to show you something. We climb the stairs, my heels clicking against marble, the sound echoing in the vastness. The second floor is no less impressive, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering spectacular views of the grounds. I catch glimpses of gardens, a pool that looks more like a private resort, and what might be a tennis court in the distance. Your room, Artem announces, pushing open a set of double doors. I step inside and freeze. The space before me is larger than my entire apartment, done in shades of cream and soft gold that catch the late afternoon light streaming through French doors leading to a private balcony. A king-sized bed dominates one wall, draped in linens that probably cost more than my car. But what truly catches my eye is the separate sitting area, complete with an easel and art supplies arranged perfectly beside floor-to-ceiling windows. "Yep, that you mentioned wanting to keep up with your design work," Artem says quietly. "I thought you might like a proper studio space." Something warm and dangerous unfurls in my chest at his thoughtfulness. Thank you," I manage, running my fingers over the pristine brushes. "This is incredible." "Through here," he continues, moving to another door, "is your office." The home office is a designer's dream, sleek and modern, with a state-of-the-art computer setup and enough desk space to spread out multiple projects. But what catches my eye is the wall of built-in shelving, already filled with design books and industry magazines I recognize. "How did you know which ones to get?" Artem's lips curve into that infuriating smirk I'm coming to know too well. "I do my research, Devochka." Before I can process the implications of that, he pulls something from his pocket, a sleek, flesh-colored earpiece that looks like it belongs in a spy movie. "What's this?" "Insurance," he says, pressing it into my palm. "It's untraceable, linked directly to my personal line. If you're ever in trouble, if you ever need me, just press here." He demonstrates the subtle button. "I'll come immediately." The weight of it in my hand feels heavier than its size would suggest. "You really expect trouble to follow us here?" His expression darkens. "I expect nothing, and prepare for everything. Wear it always, Emily. Promise me." There's something in his voice, an edge of desperation beneath the command, that makes me nod. "I promise." "Good." His thumb brushes over my knuckles before he releases my hand. "Now, about our arrangement?" My heart skips at his tone. "What about it?" "We should discuss expectations." He moves to lean against my new desk, every motion graceful and predatory. "This marriage has a clear endpoint, 3 years, until I can apply for my green card. After that, we can go our separate ways." The words shouldn't sting. This is exactly what I agreed to, after all. A business arrangement, nothing more. So why does my chest feel tight at the thought of it ending? "Of course," I say, aiming for casual and probably missing by miles. "Though we'll need to be convincing until then. Photos together, public appearances." "Exactly." His eyes darken as they rake over me. "And private arrangements can be negotiated." Heat floods my cheeks as memories of our honeymoon flash through my mind. His hands on my skin, his mouth claiming mine, the way he'd made me feel things I'd never imagined possible. "What kind of arrangements did you have in mind?" I'm proud that my voice only shakes a little. He pushes off from the desk, closing the distance between us with predatory grace. "I think you know exactly what I mean, Devochka." His fingers brush my cheek, and I can't help leaning into his touch. "Unless you'd prefer we keep things strictly professional?" "No," I whisper before I can stop myself. "I mean, casual could work, for appearances." His answering smile is pure sin. "For appearances," he agrees. But there's something darker in his voice, something that makes my pulse race. "Though I should warn you," he leans closer, his breath hot against my ear. "I'm not very good at casual." I shiver despite the warmth of the room. "Neither am I." "Then perhaps," his lips brush my neck, just barely, "we should stop pretending that's what this is." Before I can respond, he pulls back, leaving me breathless and confused. "Get settled in," he says, his voice back to businesslike, although his eyes still burn. "Dinner is at 7. He's gone before I can gather my scattered thoughts, leaving me alone in my beautiful new prison. Because that's what this is, isn't it? A gilded cage, no matter how comfortable. So why does it feel more like home with every passing minute? I move to the windows, watching as Artem crosses the grounds below, speaking with his security team. Even from here, I can see the power in his movements, the authority that radiates from him. He's dangerous, I remind myself. A man with secrets dark enough to require an army of guards and untraceable communication devices. And yet, my fingers brush the earpiece he gave me, warming it against my skin. He's also the man who remembered my love of art, who created this space for me without being asked. The man who looks at me like I'm something precious, even as he promises our marriage has an expiration date. Maybe we're both pretending this is simpler than it is. Maybe we're both lying to ourselves about what's really growing between us. But as I watch the sun set over my new home, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, I can't bring myself to care. For now, I'll take what I can get. This beautiful room, his heated glances, the promise of casual arrangements that feel anything but casual. The rest, well, that's a problem for another day.
Chapter 17. Artem. The dining room gleams in the soft evening light, crystal and silver catching the glow of the chandeliers I had specially installed when I bought this mansion. Everything is perfect, from the temperature of the wine to the precise angle of each place setting. But as I watch the Belmont family file in for this unexpected dinner, I know no amount of perfection will make this evening easy. Charles enters first, his silver hair perfectly coiffed but new lines of tension marking his face. Behind him, Vivian's grace seems forced, her smile brittle as she takes in the opulent surroundings. Henry follows, already eyeing the decanter of scotch on the sidebar, while his sister Chloe bounces in with characteristic enthusiasm, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension. And then there's Emily. My wife stands in the doorway for a moment, stunning in a deep blue dress that makes her eyes shine like sapphires. Just the sight of her sends heat coursing through my veins, memories of this morning, her skin against mine, her soft sighs as I kissed her awake, threatening my carefully maintained control. Artem. Charles's voice cuts through my thoughts. A word in private before dinner? I catch Emily's concerned glance but give her a subtle nod. Of course. My study is this way. The heavy oak door closes behind us with a soft click that seems to echo in the sudden silence. Charles moves to the window, staring out at the manicured grounds where security teams patrol with clockwork precision. I know what happened on your honeymoon, he says without preamble, his reflection grim in the darkened glass. The attack, the assassin. Ice slides down my spine, but I keep my voice steady. And how exactly did you come by this information? He turns, eyes hard. I may have agreed to this arrangement, but that doesn't mean I stopped protecting my daughter. I have my own sources, my own ways of staying informed. Interesting. I make a mental note to have Victor investigate exactly what sources Charles Belmont has access to. The situation was handled. Was it? He steps closer and I have to admire his courage. Most men wouldn't dare challenge me, especially in my own home. Because from what I hear, my daughter could have been killed. Emily was never in any real danger. The lie tastes bitter on my tongue. I have the best security team money can buy. And yet someone still got close enough to try to kill you both. Charles's voice rises slightly before he gets himself under control. I agreed to this marriage to save my company, not to put my daughter in the crosshairs of whatever enemies you've made. The accusation hangs heavy in the air between us. I could tell him the truth, that his precious company was already in the crosshairs of men far more dangerous than me. That by marrying Emily, I've given her more protection than he ever could. But that would mean revealing too much. I understand your concern, I say instead, keeping my tone measured. But I assure you Emily's safety is my highest priority. What happened on our honeymoon was an isolated incident, and I've taken steps to ensure it won't happen again. Charles studies me for a long moment, his jaw working. She's my daughter, Romanov. Not just some business asset you can write off if things go wrong. Something dark and possessive rises in my chest. She's my wife, I remind him, letting just enough edge creep into my voice to make him step back. And I protect what's mine. Before he can respond, a knock at the door interrupts us. Dinner is served, Victor announces, his timing impeccable as always. The dining room buzzes with conversation when we return, most of it generated by Chloe's excited chatter about her latest design project. Emily sits at my right hand, exactly where she belongs, though concern flickers in her eyes as she takes in my expression. I squeeze her hand under the table, savoring the way she leans slightly into my touch. The simple contact grounds me, helps me focus as the first course is served. So, Henry says already on his second scotch, about the quarterly projections for Belmont Realty. Actually, I cut in smoothly, I've been meaning to discuss some changes in the company structure. I turn to Emily, enjoying the way Henry's face darkens. As majority shareholder, I've decided to restructure the executive team. You and I will serve as co-CEOs, effective immediately. Silence falls over the table. Emily's fork clatters against fine china as she stares at me, those remarkable eyes wide with surprise. What? I've had the paperwork drawn up already. I take a sip of wine, savoring the moment. Equal shares, equal authority. It seems only fitting, given your business degree and intimate knowledge of the company. Now wait just a minute, Henry sputters, his face reddening. You can't just... I can, actually. I meet his glare steadily. As majority shareholder, I can restructure management however I see fit, unless you'd like to challenge my authority in this matter. The threat in my tone isn't subtle. Henry's mouth opens and closes, but no words come out. Beside him, Charles grips his wine glass so tightly, I worry it might shatter. Oh, how romantic. Chloe sighs, breaking the tension. Working together side by side. Do you have a brother, Artem? Preferably one who also believes in workplace equality? Chloe, Emily warns. But I catch the pride brightening her eyes, the slight smile she tries to hide behind her wineglass. Trust me, she adds dryly. Married life isn't something I'd wish on you just yet, little sister. I hide my scoff in my own glass, remembering exactly how enthusiastically my wife had embraced married life this morning. Twice. I'm merely recognizing talent, I say smoothly. Emily's insights into the business have already proven invaluable. The look she gives me is equal parts gratitude and suspicion, as if she can't quite believe my motives are so simple. She's right to be suspicious, of course. Nothing about this arrangement is simple anymore. The rest of dinner passes in a blur of forced pleasantries and underlying tensions. Henry drinks too much, Charles watches me like a hawk, and Vivian attempts to maintain some semblance of normal conversation. Through it all, I'm acutely aware of Emily beside me. The brush of her arm against mine as she reaches for her wine, the subtle scent of her perfume, the way her chest rises and falls with each careful breath. It's only when the Belmonts finally leave that I allow myself to really look at her. She stands in the foyer, backlit by crystal sconces, more beautiful than any woman has a right to be. Co-CEO, she says softly, turning to face me. Why didn't you tell me? I move closer, drawn to her like a moth to flame. Would you have accepted if I had? Probably not. A smile tugs at her lips. I would have assumed it was some kind of trick. And now? My fingers find her waist, pulling her closer. What do you assume about my motives? She studies me, head tilted slightly. That they're probably more complicated than simply recognizing talent. Smart girl. I lean down, my lips brushing her ear. Or maybe I just like the idea of keeping you close, Devochka. Very close. A shiver runs through her, and her hands come up to rest on my chest. Is that what this is about? Keeping your enemies closer? You're not my enemy, Emily. I pull back just enough to meet her eyes. You never were. The look she gives me is full of questions she's too afraid to ask. But before either of us can break this fragile moment, Victor appears at the end of the hall. Sir, Moscow is on the line. Reality crashes back in. I step away from Emily, already missing her warmth. We'll continue this discussion later. She nods, but there's something knowing in her eyes now. Something that tells me our next conversation won't be so easily deflected. I watch her climb the stairs, her movements graceful even in exhaustion, and wonder how much longer I can keep her in the dark. How much longer before she realizes that making her co-CEO wasn't just about recognizing her talents or keeping her close. It was about protecting her. Because the storm that's coming won't spare anyone in its path, and at least this way, she'll have some power of her own when it hits. I just hope it's enough.
Chapter 18. Emily. The California summer sun beats down on the familiar driveway of my family's mansion as I park my car. But something feels different today. Maybe it's the 2 months of living with Artem that have changed my perspective. Or maybe it's just that I finally feel like my own person instead of the family's perpetual disappointment. Even the reduced security detail, just one guard following at a discreet distance, feels like progress. I smooth down my silk blouse, a designer piece that still makes me do a double take when I catch my reflection. My whole wardrobe has undergone an upgrade since the wedding, though Artem insists it's just part of maintaining appearances. Like the way his hands linger when he helps me zip up my dresses is just business. The front door opens before I reach it, revealing Henry with a tumbler of scotch already in hand despite the early hour. His face darkens when he sees me, and something in my stomach shifts unpleasantly. "Well, if it isn't our new co-CEO," he says, voice dripping with disdain. "Come to check on your investment?" I brush past him into the foyer, refusing to let him see how his tone affects me. "Actually, I'm here to see Chloe. She's home for summer break, remember?" "Oh yes, family time." He follows me, ice clinking in his glass. "Though I suppose that means something different to you now, doesn't it? Now that you're sleeping your way to the top." I whirl to face him, heat flooding my cheeks. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." He steps closer, whiskey-soured breath hot on my face. "Did you think we wouldn't figure it out? That your precious husband just happened to make you co-CEO out of the goodness of his heart?" "I earned that position," I snap, standing my ground even as nausea roils in my stomach. "I have the same business degree you do, Henry, the same knowledge of our company. The only difference is that Artem actually recognizes my potential instead of dismissing me because I'm a woman." His laugh is ugly. "Potential? Is that what we're calling it now? Tell me, sister dear, how does it feel to be the whore of a Russian?" "Henry!" Chloe's voice cracks through the air like a whip. She stands at the top of the stairs, eyes wide with shock. "What are you talking about?" My heart stops. "Chloe, don't... Oh, you didn't know?" Henry's smile is cruel as he turns to our baby sister. "Your perfect sister married a Bratva boss, a criminal, a murderer, all to save Daddy's precious company." The blood drains from Chloe's face. "What?" "No, that's not..." "Emily and Artem met online. They fell in love." "Wake up, little sister." Henry downs the rest of his scotch. "It was all a lie. Every bit of it. Our sister sold herself to a monster to keep you in your fancy apartment and designer clothes." "Stop it," I plead. But the damage is done. I watch as understanding dawns in Chloe's eyes, followed quickly by horror. "Is it true?" she whispers. Was it all fake?" My silence is answer enough. Tears well in her eyes as she shakes her head. "I don't understand. Why would you..." "Because we were going to lose everything," I say softly. "The company, the houses, your apartment building. You would have had to drop out of school. I couldn't let that happen." "So, you married a criminal?" Her voice breaks. "The man I've been dreaming of finding for myself is actually some kind of mobster?" "It's not that simple." "Isn't it?" Tears stream down her face now. "My whole life, I've looked up to you. Wanted to be just like my big sister who always did the right thing. And now I find out you're just a whore?" Henry supplies helpfully, pouring himself another drink. "Shut up," I snap, but the word hangs in the air between us, poisonous and heavy. Chloe wraps her arms around herself, looking suddenly young and lost. I can't deal with this right now. I thought I knew you, Emily. I thought..." She turns and flees up the stairs, her sobs echoing in the massive foyer. I start to follow, but Henry's voice stops me. "Let her go," he says, almost gentle now. "She needs time to accept that her hero isn't so heroic after all." Something inside me breaks. Without another word, I turn and run from the house, barely making it to my car before the tears start falling. The drive home passes in a blur, my vision swimming as Chloe's face haunts me, the shock, the betrayal, the loss of innocence I'd tried so hard to protect. My hands shake on the steering wheel as I pull into the garage of Artem's mansion. Our mansion, I correct myself, though right now it feels more like a gilded cage than ever. My stomach lurches violently as I step out of the car. I barely make it to the nearest bathroom, dropping my designer purse in the hallway as I rush inside. The cool marble floor presses against my knees as I heave, my whole body trembling with the force of it. When there's nothing left in my stomach, I sit back against the bathroom wall, drawing my knees to my chest. The house is silent around me. Artem away at meetings, the staff discreet as always. For the first time in weeks, I'm truly alone. But as another wave of nausea hits, accompanied by a dizziness that has nothing to do with my family's rejection, a terrible suspicion begins to form. This isn't the first morning I've felt sick lately. And now that I think about it, other little changes in my body over the past weeks start to make a horrifying kind of sense. My hand drifts to my still flat stomach as tears stream down my face. Oh God, I whisper to the empty bathroom. What have I done? I didn't know in the beginning, of course, but everyone is against me anyway. They've always made me out to be a freak, someone that doesn't belong in the family despite my best efforts to fit in. It's cruel, but when all you know is cruelty, you find comfort in their acceptance. But now, I feel like it's gone too far. Even my Chloe, who has never shown an ounce of bitterness toward me, looked at me through a different lens. I'm certain she thinks less of me now, as does everyone. My fingers run through my hair, gripping it close to my scalp and tugging at the roots. I feel the gritty sweat seeping through my pores, dirtying me more, tainting me with a sickly, sour scent. The weight of everything, Chloe's heartbreak, Henry's cruel words, and this new, terrifying possibility, crashes over me like a wave. I curl in on myself, shoulders shaking with silent sobs, alone in this massive house with a secret that could change everything.
Chapter 19. Artem. The downtown Manhattan Beach office building looks innocuous from the outside, just another sleek glass and steel structure reflecting the late afternoon sun. But the top floor, accessible only by a private elevator that requires both a key card and biometric scan, tells a different story. This is where the real business happens, where decisions are made that can topple empires or save them. Victor waits for me in the conference room, his usually stoic expression tight with concern. The room's dimmed lights and soundproofed walls create the perfect environment for sharing secrets, or plotting revenge. "We have a problem," he says without preamble, as I take my seat at the head of the table. A serious one. I loosen my tie, already feeling the weight of whatever news he's about to deliver. "How serious?" "Someone talked." He slides a tablet across the polished mahogany surface. "The FBI has been asking questions about new Russian investors in California, and our sources in Moscow confirm that Kazakov's men are closing in on your location." Ice slides down my spine as I scan the intelligence reports. Surveillance photos show familiar faces in places they shouldn't be. Men I thought I'd left behind in Russia now walking the streets of Manhattan Beach. "It's too precise to be coincidence," Victor continues. "The timing, the specific details they seem to know. Someone with intimate knowledge of your movements has been feeding information to both sides." My jaw tightens as Charles Belmont's words from dinner echo in my mind. I have my own sources, my own ways of staying informed. "The attack on our honeymoon," I say slowly. Charles knew details he shouldn't have known. "Exactly." Victor's expression darkens. "And it all started after the deal with the Belmonts. The question is, how deep does their involvement go?" I stand, moving to the window. The Pacific stretches endlessly before me, deceptively peaceful. Somewhere out there, enemies circle like sharks scenting blood in the water. And now I have to consider the possibility that my wife's family, my own in-laws, might be the ones who drew them here. "I want everything," I order, not turning around. "Every phone call, every email, every meeting Charles Belmont has had in the last 6 months. If he so much as sneezed in the direction of someone suspicious, I want to know about it. Already working on it." Papers rustle behind me. "But there's more. The FBI agent in charge of the investigation, Roberts, he's been asking specifically about financial connections between Voron and Belmont Realty." Something cold and dangerous unfurls in my chest. They're trying to prove I'm Voron. Yes? And if they succeed? He doesn't need to finish the thought. If the FBI can prove I'm the notorious Bratva leader everyone thinks died in Moscow, no amount of carefully crafted business deals or marriage-based citizenship applications will save me. I'll lose everything. My freedom. My empire. Emily. Increase security at the house, I say, turning back to face Victor. But quietly. I don't want to alarm Emily until we know more. Speaking of your wife. Victor hesitates, which immediately puts me on edge. He never hesitates. There's been some unusual activity around her family lately. Meetings that don't appear in any official records. Calls from blocked numbers.
You think they're using her? The words come out as a growl, possessive anger rising like a tide.
I think we need to consider all possibilities. But even as he says it, I know it's not true. Not Emily. I've seen her soul laid bare, watched her fight for her family even when they undervalued her. She's many things. Stubborn, fierce, occasionally reckless. But she's not a traitor. And if she was, what would I do? How could I harm such a precious soul? I've gotten soft, but only for her. I will not spare anyone else in her treacherous family. Keep digging, I tell Victor. I want proof before we make any moves. If someone in the Belmont family is working against us, I need to know exactly who and why. He nods, gathering his papers. And if we find proof? My smile is all teeth. Then they'll learn why people fear the name Voron. The drive home takes longer than usual, my mind racing with possibilities and plans. But all thoughts of betrayal and revenge evaporate when I find Emily curled on one of the living room sofas, looking small and vulnerable in ways that make my chest ache. Her face is pale, dark circles shadowing her eyes, and she's wrapped in one of my suit jackets like armor. The sight of her wearing my clothes does something primitive to my insides, even as concern floods through me. Emily. I'm at her side in an instant, brushing hair back from her clammy forehead. What's wrong? She blinks up at me, those remarkable eyes glassy with exhaustion. Nothing, just tired, and maybe coming down with something. I scoop her into my arms before she can protest, settling us both on the sofa with her cradled against my chest. She feels fragile in ways that terrify me, this woman who's usually so full of fire and fight. You should have called me, I murmur, pressing a kiss to her temple. I would have come home. You had meetings. She burrows closer, as if seeking my warmth. Important ones, I'm sure. If she only knew. But right now, with her soft and pliant in my arms, none of that seems to matter. Not the FBI, not Kazakov's men, not even the possibility of betrayal within her own family. Nothing is more important than you, I say roughly, the words escaping before I can stop them. She tilts her head back to look at me, surprise flickering across her tired features. You mean that, don't you? Of course I do. My hand slides to cup her cheek, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. Everything I've done, buying the company shares, making you co-CEO, it's all been for you. Why? Her voice is barely a whisper. Why go to such lengths for an arranged marriage? Because I'm falling in love with you, I think, but don't say. Because watching you come alive in that boardroom, seeing you finally step into your power, makes me want to give you the world. Because the thought of anyone hurting you makes me want to burn everything to the ground. But before I can find the right words, her eyes flutter closed. Exhaustion finally claiming her. I hold her closer, breathing in the subtle scent of her perfume, and try to ignore the way my heart clenches at how perfectly she fits in my arms. Sleep, Devochka, I murmur into her hair. I'll keep you safe. And I will. From her family's machinations, from my enemies, from everything that threatens to tear us apart. Because somewhere between our arranged marriage and this moment, Emily Belmont has become everything to me. I just pray I can protect her from the storm that's coming, even if it means protecting her from her own family. Chapter 20. Artem. The scent of coffee and something sweet pulls me from sleep before my alarm can sound. For a moment, I lie still, taking in the unfamiliar sensation of waking to domesticity rather than urgent messages or security reports. Sunlight streams through the windows I never bothered to have curtained, painting patterns across sheets that still smell faintly of last night's passion. I find Emily in the kitchen, looking far healthier than she did yesterday. She moves with easy grace between the professional-grade appliances, humming softly as she plates what appears to be French toast. The sight of her in my dress shirt, hem skimming mid-thigh, does dangerous things to my self-control. "Good morning," she says without turning, that uncanny awareness of my presence making something possessive stir in my chest. "Coffee's ready if you want it." I approach silently, but she's already holding out a glass of iced coffee exactly how I like it. The simple intimacy of the gesture, of her knowing this detail about me, hits harder than it should. "You're feeling better," I observe, accepting the drink. Our fingers brush, and even that slight contact sends electricity sparking through my veins. "Much." She slides a plate toward me, the French toast artfully arranged and dusted with powdered sugar. I think I just needed rest, and someone to take care of me. The weight of last night's discoveries presses against my shoulders. I should tell her about the FBI investigation, about my suspicions regarding her father. She deserves to know the danger circling ever closer. Instead, I say, I need to return to Russia soon, business that can't be handled remotely. Her hand stills on the coffee pot. "For how long?" "A few weeks, possibly longer." I keep my voice carefully neutral. "The house will be fully staffed, and security will be doubled in my absence." She sets down the pot with deliberate care, then turns to face me. Something flashes in her eyes, determination mixed with vulnerability that makes my chest tight. "Don't go," she whispers, closing the distance between us. "Or if you have to go, take me with you." "Emily." Her lips find mine before I can finish, soft and sweet with lingering traces of powdered sugar. My hands move of their own accord, pulling her closer as the kiss deepens into something hungry and desperate. When she finally pulls back, her eyes are dark with desire and something deeper. "I don't want this to be casual anymore," she breathes against my mouth. "I can't pretend that's all this is." Warning bells sound in my head, but I can't stop myself from asking, "What do you want it to be?" "Real." Her fingers trace my jaw, feather light. "I want all of you, Artem, not just the convenient parts." The words send heat coursing through my veins, but also a spike of something darker. She wants all of me? She has no idea what she's asking for. "Are you sure about that?" I growl, catching her wandering hands. "Because having all of me means trusting me completely. It means surrendering control." Her breath catches, but she doesn't look away. "I trust you." The following scene is too spicy for this version on YouTube. You can find the uncensored version on bellakingbooks.com or by following the link in the description. Thank you. My phone buzzes, shattering the peace. Victor's name flashes on the screen. "What is it?" I keep my voice low, not wanting to wake her. "We found the leak." Victor's voice is tight with tension. "The person who tipped off the FBI. Sir, it's Emily." Ice floods my veins as I turn to stare at my sleeping wife. The woman who just surrendered herself to me so completely, who whispered words of trust against my skin, had betrayed me. "That's not possible," I growl, even as doubt creeps in like poison. "There's more," Victor continues. "Something about the Belmonts, something neither of us saw coming." But I barely hear him, my attention fixed on Emily's peaceful form. Just hours ago, she'd given herself to me with complete trust. Had it all been an act? A way to keep me distracted while she fed information to my enemies? The weight of betrayal sits heavy in my chest as I end the call. Outside, the sun continues to rise over Manhattan Beach, indifferent to the way my world is crumbling. How many times had she smiled at me while plotting my destruction? How many kisses had been lies? And why, despite everything, do I still want to crawl back into bed and pull her into my arms?
Chapter 21. Emily. The sheets beside me are cold when I wake, Artem's lingering scent the only evidence he was ever here. My body aches sweetly from our morning together, rope marks still faintly visible on my wrists, a reminder of how completely I gave myself to him, how deeply I trusted him. But something feels wrong. The silence in the mansion presses against my skin like a physical weight, making each breath feel heavy with unspoken tension. Artem? My voice echoes through our bedroom as I slip into a silk robe, one of many he's bought me, each more luxurious than the last. These little gestures of his, the way he takes care of me without making it obvious, have slowly worked their way into my heart. No answer comes, and anxiety starts to curl in my stomach. I search methodically, each empty room making my heart sink lower. The kitchen where we shared breakfast just hours ago, his coffee cup still in the sink. His office, door locked tight, holding whatever secrets he's keeping from me. The garage where his car should be, the empty space seeming to mock my growing unease. Even the security detail is minimal, just 2 men by the gates instead of the usual 6. The vast house has never felt less like home, more like the gilded cage I first thought it was. But somewhere along the way, it had become home. Or rather, Artem had become home. The thought sends another wave of anxiety through me. A sudden rush of nausea hits, sending me bolting to the nearest bathroom. As I empty my stomach, tears spring to my eyes. From the sickness or the emotion, I'm not sure anymore. When I finally stand, rinsing my mouth and staring at my pale reflection, reality crashes over me like a tidal wave. The morning sickness that's been plaguing me for weeks. The bone-deep exhaustion I blamed on stress. The tenderness in my skin that I attributed to Artem's passionate attention. The way even the smell of my favorite coffee turns my stomach now. Each symptom clicks into place like pieces of a puzzle I've been too afraid to solve. My hands shake as I reach for my phone, scrolling through contacts until I find my doctor's office. I need to see Dr. Levine, I manage, proud of how steady my voice sounds despite the trembling in my fingers. It's urgent. They offer a last-minute cancellation, and I grab it without hesitation. The drive to the clinic passes in a blur of anxiety and hope, every stoplight giving me time to count backwards. The honeymoon. That night after the family dinner. This morning with the ropes. Each memory sends heat flooding through me, even as fear clutches at my throat. Dr. Levine's office is exactly as I remember it. Soothing mint green walls, gentle lighting, the faint scent of lavender that's supposed to calm nervous patients. It's not working. The receptionist ushers me back without much small talk, her usual cheery demeanor softened into something more professional. She must sense my nerves, though she doesn't comment. I step into the exam room, my shoes making small sounds against the hard floor, but every sound feels magnified in the silence. Dr. Levine enters moments later, her expression as calm and composed as always. She greets me with a warm smile, her clipboard in hand. "Sydney, it's good to see you again, but I heard this was an urgent visit. Tell me what's going on. How do you feel?" I manage a weak smile, my fingers twisting in my lap. Honestly? Nervous. I think I might be pregnant. Her gaze softens, but she doesn't jump to conclusions. Well, let's not speculate just yet. Let's get you tested and see what's going on. She moves efficiently, explaining the process while I nod along, not really absorbing her words. The test itself is straightforward, clinical and detached, but my heart pounds with every step. When she leaves the room to process the results, the silence threatens to suffocate me. I clasp my hands together, pressing them tightly between my knees as if I can keep myself grounded. My mind is a whirlwind of thoughts. What if I am? What if I'm not? How will Artem react? The thought of him, his sharp eyes, and the way his strong hands cradle me like I'm the most precious thing in his world, sends a rush of warmth through me. But then there's the other side of him, the calculating, dangerous man who keeps secrets locked behind his office door. I've seen his ruthlessness firsthand, even if he's never turned it on me. My leg bounces uncontrollably as I wait for the results, my mind racing with possibilities. What will Artem say? Will this change things between us? Make them better or worse? When Dr. Levine comes back into the room, her face is unreadable. There's nothing in it that would hint at any particular result, but I already know the answer. I already know what awaits me when she opens her mouth. The test is positive, Dr. Levine says gently, her kind eyes crinkling at the corners. You're about 8 weeks along. The world seems to stop spinning for a moment. But we were careful, I whisper, though memories of passionate encounters without protection flash through my mind. Most of the time. Nothing's foolproof, she explains, her smile reassuring. Even with perfect use, there's always a small chance. Would you like to see the ultrasound? I nod numbly, and soon a grainy black and white image appears on the screen. A tiny flutter catches my eye, and Dr. Levine's voice seems to come from very far away as she points out features, the head, the developing limbs, and most importantly, that flickering light that marks a heartbeat. That's your baby, she says softly. Tears spring to my eyes as I stare at the screen, one hand pressed to my still flat stomach. Our baby. Mine and Artem's. Despite everything, the arrangement, the complications, the growing tension between us, we've created something real. Something that proves this isn't just business anymore, no matter what we pretend. Because I love him. The realization hits me with stunning clarity, stealing my breath. Somewhere between our first kiss and this moment, between his protective instincts and his tender touches, his fierce passion and his quiet vulnerability, I've fallen completely in love with my dangerous, complicated husband. Everything looks perfectly healthy, Dr. Levine assures me, printing several copies of the ultrasound. Her voice drops softer as she adds, I know this might not have been planned, but you have options. No, I cut her off firmly. This baby is wanted. Very wanted. The afternoon sun is bright as I step out of the clinic. The precious images clutch to my chest like treasure. Maybe this baby is exactly what we need. Proof that what's growing between us is worth fighting for. A new beginning that could bridge the gap between business arrangement and real marriage. My phone buzzes, Henry's name flashing on the screen. After our last confrontation, I almost ignore it. But something in my gut, maternal instinct already kicking in maybe, tells me to answer. Where are you? His voice is tight with urgency, none of his usual condescension present. Are you somewhere safe? I'm at my doctor's office, I say slowly, unease creeping up my spine like a cold finger. Why? Stay there. I'm coming to get you. Road noise crackles through the speaker. He's driving fast, reckless. Artem knows about the FBI tip-off. He's turned on all of us. My blood runs cold, one hand instinctively moving to protect my stomach. What are you talking about? Someone told the FBI where to find him, his real identity, his location, everything. He thinks it was you. That's ridiculous, I snap, my free hand curling into a fist. I would never betray him. I love. It doesn't matter what's true. Henry cuts me off. You're not safe with him anymore. None of us are. Just stay where you... The screech of tires drowns out his voice as a black van tears into the parking lot. Everything happens too fast. Doors flying open, masked figures lunging toward me. I try to run, but rough hands grab my arms, uncaring of my struggles. No! My scream echoes across the parking lot, bouncing off concrete and glass, seeming to reverberate through the entire city. Help! Somebody help me! A sweet-smelling cloth presses over my mouth and nose. The ultrasound photos scatter across the pavement as I struggle, our baby's first picture face up on the concrete. My scream cuts off sharply as darkness starts to creep in at the edges of my vision. Artem. I try to whisper as consciousness fades, one hand still pressed protectively to my stomach where our child grows. I'm sorry. I love you. The last thing I hear is the echo of my own terrified scream still reverberating through the parking lot, a sound that will haunt Artem's nightmares when he learns what happened here. Then nothing but black. Chapter 22. Emily. Consciousness returns slowly, my head pounding as the van sways beneath me. The sweet chemical smell of chloroform lingers in my nose, making my stomach roll. Or maybe that's the morning sickness. Either way, I force myself to stay still, keeping my eyes closed as I assess my situation, just as Artem taught me during one of our quiet moments together. Always know your surroundings before letting your enemies know you're awake, Devochka. Artem. The thought of him sends a wave of conflicting emotions through me. Love, fear, confusion. The ultrasound photos scattered across the parking lot haunt me. Will he find them? Will he understand what they mean before it's too late? Male voices murmur around me in Russian, and my heart stutters as I recognize the cadences. These aren't strangers. These are voices I've heard every day for months. The guard who always nods respectfully when I pass through the garden. The one who brings me tea when I work late in my office. Men I've smiled at, thanked, trusted with my safety. I pick out phrases here and there. My Russian isn't fluent, but I've learned enough from Artem's murmured endearments to understand scattered words. Orders. FBI. Betrayal. Each word feels like a knife in my chest. One voice rises above the others, and I recognize Anton, Artem's head of security for the Manhattan Beach House. The man who just yesterday held a door for me, who joked about my growing addiction to the fancy coffee machine Artem installed just for me. She's starting to wake up. I open my eyes then, knowing there's no point in pretending anymore. 4 masked men surround me, but Anton has already pulled his off, revealing that hawkish face I've come to know over the past months. The face that sometimes softened when he saw Artem and me together, as if approving of how his boss had found happiness. Why? I manage, my voice rough from screaming. One hand moves instinctively to my stomach, though I try to make the movement seem casual. My baby, our baby, feels like a secret I need to protect now more than ever. If Artem wanted me taken, why not do it himself? The betrayal tastes bitter in my mouth. These men have watched our love story unfold, have seen how Artem and I grew from reluctant arranged spouses to something real and precious. How could they turn on us like this? Anton's laugh is cold. You think this was Artem's order? Your husband doesn't even know you're gone yet. But he will, once the FBI raids the mansion. Ice slides down my spine as Henry's warning echoes in my mind. They think I betrayed them. Think I sold Artem out to the FBI. I didn't... I start, but movement catches my eye through the van's window. A car following too close, moving erratically. The impact comes before I can brace myself. Metal screams against metal as something slams into the van's side, sending us spinning. I'm thrown against the wall, then the floor, my arms curling protectively around my midsection as I pray for my baby's safety. When the world stops spinning, most of Artem's men lie unconscious or groaning. The back doors wrench open, revealing Henry's familiar face. Come on! He reaches for me, practically dragging me out of the wreck. We don't have much time. I stumble after him, my legs shaky as adrenaline courses through me. His car idles nearby. He planned this. Orchestrated the crash to rescue me. Get in! He shoves me toward the passenger side before running around to the driver's seat. We peel away from the scene just as Anton starts to stir in the van. Where are we going? I demand as Henry takes corners too fast, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. What's happening? Somewhere safe, he says grimly. The FBI is moving on Artem's mansion any minute now. They have enough evidence to prove he's Voron. My head spins, and not just from the crash. You did this, I whisper as understanding dawns. You're the one who tipped them off. His smile is sharp, satisfied. Of course I did. Did you really think I'd let some Russian criminal take control of our company? Let him make you co-CEO while I got pushed aside? Henry, stop! My voice shakes as I press a hand to my still flat stomach. You don't understand. I'm pregnant. He swerves slightly before regaining control. What? I just found out. At the doctor's office. I'm carrying Artem's baby. For a moment, something like doubt crosses his face. Then it hardens into determination. All the more reason to get you away from him. That kind of man shouldn't be raising children. That kind of man is my husband, I snap. The father of my child. You can't just... I can, and I will. He takes another sharp turn, heading toward the industrial district. This was the plan all along, Emily. Dad and I arranged this marriage knowing exactly who Artem was, what he could do for the company. We just had to wait for the right moment to turn him in. Horror floods through me as the full scope of their betrayal becomes clear. You used me as bait. We used you to save our family's legacy, he corrects. Once Artem's arrested, his shares of the company revert to us. Everything he owns becomes ours through you, his legal wife. And what about me? I demand, fury burning away my fear. What about my baby? You'll be fine. He waves off my concern like it's nothing. You think anyone will blame you once the truth comes out? The innocent wife who knew nothing about her husband's criminal empire? The pregnant widow left to carry on alone? Widow? Ice floods my veins. What did you do? His silence speaks volumes. Henry, I grab his arm, not caring that it makes the car swerve. What did you do? What needed to be done, he says quietly. The FBI isn't the only ones closing in on your husband. Let's just say certain interested parties in Moscow have been informed of Voron's location. The world seems to tilt sideways as I process his words. Not just betrayal, then? Murder. They're going to kill Artem, take everything he's built, leave our child fatherless. You're wrong about one thing, I say, my voice steady despite the terror and rage coursing through me. I won't be fine, because if anything happens to Artem, I will burn everything you love to the ground. Starting with this company you're so desperate to control. Henry glances at me, surprise flickering across his face. You don't mean that. This is your family's legacy too. No, I say softly, my hand pressing against my stomach where Artem's child grows. This baby is my legacy now, and I won't let you destroy its father. His jaw tightens as he pulls into what looks like an abandoned warehouse. You don't have a choice, sister dear. None of us do anymore. The warehouse doors open automatically as we approach, and my heart sinks as I realize this was all planned. They've thought of everything. But they don't know everything. They don't know about the earpiece Artem gave me, still nestled safely in my ear, where his men never thought to check. They don't know that even now a signal is broadcasting my location to the man they think they've outsmarted. As Henry parks inside the warehouse, I close my eyes and pray I'm right. Pray that Artem's love for me is stronger than his belief in my betrayal, because right now, he's the only hope our baby has of having both its parents alive to watch it grow.
Chapter 23. Artem. Time becomes a living thing. Each second that passes without word from Emily or my security team, another weight pressing down on my chest. The silence in my office feels wrong, unnatural, broken only by the steady tick of the antique clock that once belonged to a man I killed. Now its measured beats mark the moments my wife is missing. And the more seconds it ticks down, the more I realize how deeply I care for her. Sir. Victor materializes in the doorway, his face carved from stone. In 15 years, I've never seen him look quite like this. The van never arrived at the office. Ice slides down my spine, but I keep my voice steady. Explain. There was an accident. He hesitates, which tells me everything I need to know before he continues. Local police found it on its side near Robertson Boulevard. Our men were unconscious inside, but Emily... Is she alive? Unharmed? The words come out as more growl than speech, something primal rising in my chest. Where is she? Gone. Victor's jaw tightens. Security footage shows another vehicle. A soft ping cuts through the tension, making my blood run cold. The tracking device. The one I gave Emily with strict instructions to wear always. The one she'd accepted with those remarkable eyes full of trust, promising she'd keep it with her, not knowing the danger being my wife has drawn her into unwillingly. My hands shake slightly as I pull up the signal on my phone. The location makes my teeth grind. An abandoned warehouse in the industrial district. The kind of place bodies are found, not the kind of place where rescues are staged. Whoever it is, they aren't going through official channels, which makes every alarm bell ring in my head. Pull up the property records, I order, already moving toward my weapons safe. I want to know everything about that building, who it belongs to, The architect that built it, all of it. Victor's fingers fly across his tablet. Sir, it's registered to a shell corporation, but the trail leads back to Henry Belmont. The name hits me like a knife to the chest. Her own brother. All this time I'd suspected Emily of betrayal when the snake had been in her own family. My sweet, innocent Emily, who could never have suspected him. There's more, Victor says quietly. He's been working with both sides, not just feeding information to the FBI about your identity. He's reached out to Kazakov in Moscow to tell him where you are. Arctic fury floods through me, a cold so deep it burns. The implications sink in like knives. Henry hasn't just betrayed his sister to law enforcement. He's set my most dangerous enemy on our trail, knowing exactly what Kazakov will do if he finds us. He doesn't plan on making this legal or clean, and neither do I. The FBI is mobilizing, Victor continues, his voice tight. And our sources in Moscow confirm Kazakov's men are already in California, narrowing in. If we move on the warehouse, we'll have both closing in within minutes. Let them come. I check my weapons with methodical precision, each movement a promise of violence to come. They can chase whatever trail they want. I have more important matters to attend to. The drive passes in a blur of fury and focus, my mind cycling through contingencies even as my heart thunders with fear for Emily. The weight of what's at stake threatens to overwhelm me, but I force it down, channel it into the cold calculation that's kept me alive all these years. Police sirens wail in the distance, the FBI making their move on my empty mansion, no doubt. And somewhere in the shadows, Kazakov's men circle like wolves, waiting for their chance. Let them all chase shadows while I hunt what matters. If I'm lucky, they'll go after each other instead of my beloved Emily, and their mutual destruction will be the sweetest reward. The warehouse looms ahead, a hulking mass of corrugated steel and broken windows. 2 guards patrol the perimeter, trying to look casual but moving with the distinctive gait of hired muscle. Amateur hour. Henry couldn't even be bothered to hire professionals for his sister's imprisonment. He won't have kept her on the first floor. There. Victor points to a second-floor window where movement catches the dying sunlight. Office space, probably converted to a holding area. I study the building through a sniper's eyes, cataloging entry points and defensive positions. Another ping from Emily's tracker confirms her location, sending fresh determination coursing through me. Let FBI come, let Kazakov come. None of it matters as long as I have her. Take your team around back, I tell Victor as I check my weapons one final time. Clear the ground floor, but keep it quiet. I don't want Henry spooking before I reach him. And you? My hand tightens on my gun as I think of Emily, my fierce, beautiful wife who trusted me even after learning what I am, who looks at me like I'm something worth saving, even with blood on my hands. I'm going to remind my brother-in-law why people fear the name Voron. Police sirens grow closer as I move toward the building, their wail mixing with distant thunder. The storm that's been threatening all day is finally breaking, and I welcome it. Let the rain wash away whatever comes next. Because somewhere in that warehouse is my wife, probably frightened but refusing to show it because that's who she is, stronger than anyone gives her credit for. Fierce even in her vulnerability. The woman who made me feel human again, who gave me something worth living for beyond power and revenge. And I will burn the world to ash to get her back.
Chapter 24. Emily. My heart pounds against my ribs as I watch Henry pace the warehouse office, his expensive Italian shoes clicking against concrete in an erratic rhythm that matches my racing pulse. The rope binding my wrists is rough, amateur, nothing like the silk cords Artem uses to worship my body. It loosens some as I twist my arms around, and I pray that it will loosen more, until I'm able to get a finger or a hand out. And then, I don't know what happens next. Even in the dim light filtering through grimy windows, I can see how far my brother has fallen. His usually immaculate appearance has crumbled along with his control. Suit jacket discarded, tie askew, dark circles shadowing wild eyes. His movements are erratic and on edge, as if he doesn't know what to do next, but has gone too far to go back. Fear and fury war in my chest. Fear for my unborn child, growing impossibly precious with each passing second, and fury at the brother who would sacrifice his own sister, his own niece or nephew, in his twisted game for power. The nausea that's become my constant companion threatens to rise again, but I force it down. I can't show weakness. Not now. They'll be here soon, Henry mutters, checking his phone for the 100th time. His hand shakes slightly, making the screen's blue glow dance across the walls. The FBI, Kazakov's men. They're all closing in. Your precious husband won't be able to resist playing hero. He'll come for you either way, and they'll be waiting for him. And what then? I ask, watching him unravel. You'll kill the father of my child? Leave your own blood fatherless? Don't. He whirls on me, something desperate and ugly in his expression. Don't try to manipulate me with this pregnancy. It only proves I'm right. You need to be saved from him. That child deserves better than a criminal for a father. Better like you? I can't keep the bitterness from my voice. A man who would betray his own sister? Who would orphan his own niece or nephew for power? I'm protecting our family legacy. His control snaps completely as he stalks toward me. Everything I've done has been for the family. Dad understood that when we arranged this marriage. We just had to wait for the right moment to take him down. The full scope of their betrayal still stings, even knowing what I know now. All those family dinners, the gentle pressure to accept the marriage, the way they'd played on my loyalty to manipulate me into position. Your own sister, I whisper, the words tasting like ash. You used your own sister as bait. Oh, don't be so dramatic. He waves dismissively, but there's something frantic in the gesture. You'll be fine. The innocent pregnant widow left to carry on alone, the media will eat it up. His smile turns sharp, calculating. And once Artem's gone, everything he owns becomes ours through you and the child. The perfect plan. A soft beat breaks the tension, and Henry's eyes narrow as he spots the earpiece I thought I'd hidden beneath my hair. What's that? Ice floods my veins as he stalks toward me. Nothing. His hand shoots out, yanking the device from my ear with bruising force. You clever bitch, he snarls, throwing it to the ground and crushing it beneath his heel. You've been broadcasting our location this whole time. The backhand catches me off guard, snapping my head to the side. Pain blooms across my cheek, copper flooding my mouth where my teeth cut the inside of my cheek. One hand flies instinctively to protect my stomach as I steady myself, anger and betrayal alike flooding my chest with adrenaline. He's coming for me, I say softly, tasting blood as I speak. And all your plans, all your schemes, they won't save you from what happens next, what happens when Voron is woken. You think I'm afraid of him? Henry's voice rises, the last threads of his control unraveling, his hair a mess and a sneer on his lips. I have the FBI, the Russian Mafia, and an airtight case against Artem. Your precious criminal husband is finished, Emily, and the sooner you realize that, the better. You're wrong. The certainty in my voice makes him pause, his eyes wide and wild. About so many things. But mostly, you're wrong about where he is right now. The warehouse door explodes inward before Henry can respond, the sound like a thunderclap in the confined space. My heart leaps at the familiar silhouette in the doorway. Artem, my dangerous, beautiful husband, filling the frame like an avenging angel. Power radiates from every line of his body, barely contained violence promising retribution. Behind him, Victor and his most loyal men sweep in with lethal grace, securing the room with practiced efficiency. Impossible, Henry breathes, reaching for a weapon he'll never draw in time. The FBI are otherwise occupied, mostly with Kazakov, so thank you for that, brother. Artem's voice could freeze hell itself. His eyes find mine, scanning for injuries, and something terrifying flashes in their depths when he spots the mark on my cheek from Henry's backhand. Are you hurt, Devochka? The endearment, rough with barely controlled emotion, makes tears spring to my eyes. After everything, the doubt, the fear, the betrayal, he's still mine. Still the man who whispers Russian endearments against my skin in our most intimate moments. We're okay, I say softly, letting my meaning sink in. His eyes darken with understanding, flickering to where my hand still protectively covers my stomach. Not for long. Henry's laugh holds an edge of hysteria as he pulls out his phone with trembling fingers. One call, and this place will be swarming with federal agents. Your empire is finished, Romanov. Everything you've built, every shell company and fake investment, it all comes crashing down in an instant. By all means. Artem's smile is pure predator as he tosses a thick file onto the desk between them. The thud echoes like a death knell. Call them. I'm sure they'll be very interested in these records of your embezzlement. The offshore accounts, the bribes, the creative accounting that's been bleeding the company dry for years. Some family legacy you've left for your children, Henry. The color drains from Henry's face as he flips through the documents with shaking hands. This is impossible. I covered my tracks. Not well enough. Artem moves closer, every step measured and deadly. Like a wolf circling wounded prey, taking his time with the killing. Did you really think I wouldn't investigate the man who arranged my marriage? That I wouldn't dig until I found every skeleton in your closet? It doesn't matter, Henry snaps, but his voice cracks as he punches numbers into his phone. Once they know who you really are, they already do. Artem's voice carries the weight of absolute certainty. Every business deal, every investment, every piece of paperwork establishing my legitimate presence in the U.S. It's all perfectly legal, which is more than I can say for your activities. Sirens wail in the distance, growing closer with each passing second. Henry's smile turns triumphant, then falters as Artem makes no move to run. Instead, my husband looks almost pleased as heavy footsteps thunder up the stairs. FBI! The door bursts open again, agents flooding the room with weapons drawn. Everyone on the ground! What happens next feels like watching a chess master spring his trap. Artem calmly presents documentation of his legal business dealings while Victor produces evidence of Henry's crimes. I watch my brother's face crumble as he realizes the depth of his miscalculation. He hasn't just failed to destroy Artem, he's destroyed himself. Henry Belmont, the lead agent says grimly, you're under arrest for embezzlement, bribery, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The words fade into background noise as Artem crosses to me, his hands impossibly gentle as he unties my bonds. The contrast between his tender touch and the violence I just witnessed makes my heart ache. I fall into his arms the moment I'm free, breathing in his familiar scent of spice and danger and home. I thought... My voice breaks as emotions overwhelm me. When they told me you suspected me of betraying you... Never, he growls, pulling back just enough to cup my face in his hands. His eyes burn with an intensity that steals my breath. I never believed it. Not really. My heart knew better, even when my head tried to doubt. His thumb brushes the bruise on my cheek and his eyes darken dangerously. He marked what's mine. Artem. I catch his hands before he can turn back to Henry with murder in his eyes. There will be time for revenge later. Right now I need his strength, his warmth, the safety I only feel in his arms. Just hold me. Hold us. Understanding softens his expression as one large hand spans my stomach, reverent and protective. In that touch, I feel everything we haven't said yet. His joy at becoming a father, his fear at how close he came to losing us both, his fierce determination to protect what's his. The chaos continues around us, agents leading Henry away in handcuffs, Victor coordinating with local authorities, Kazakov's men either in cuffs or melting into the shadows, questions that will need answering and leads hunted down. But for now, we exist in our own bubble of possibility, held together by the strength of what we've built and the miracle growing between us. And as Artem's hands span my waist possessively, his forehead pressed to mine, I know that whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Because some loves are worth fighting for, worth killing for, worth living for. Some loves change everything.
Chapter 25. Artem. The morning sun streams through my office windows, painting golden stripes across the stack of documents Victor has prepared. Evidence of Henry's crimes fills box after box: financial records, offshore accounts, proof of bribes that will ensure he spends decades behind bars. But it's the single ultrasound photo on my desk that keeps drawing my attention, the tiny flutter of life that's changed everything. My fingers trace the grainy image, still struggling to believe this is real. That I, Voron, the most feared man in the Russian underworld, am going to be a father. The prosecutor is confident, Victor reports, his voice steady despite the exhaustion of the past few days. Dark circles shadow his eyes, evidence of sleepless nights spent building an airtight case. Between the financial records and my testimony about the attempted kidnapping, Henry Belmont won't see daylight for a very long time. The evidence of embezzlement alone carries a 20-year sentence. I nod, unable to take my eyes off the ultrasound. My child. The thought still sends a jolt through me, equal parts terror and fierce joy. And the rest of the family? Charles and Vivian Belmont are cooperating fully. They've signed affidavits confirming Henry acted alone in contacting Kazakov, who for his part has fled to Moscow. Victor hesitates, something softer crossing his usually stoic features. The Belmont family seems changed by recent events, especially after learning about the pregnancy. Charles hasn't stopped crying since the doctor confirmed Emily and the baby weren't harmed in the kidnapping. The word makes something primal stir in my chest. Emily is upstairs sleeping, her body curved protectively around our growing child even in rest. I'd watched her this morning, memorizing how she looked in the early light. Peaceful, perfect, one hand resting on her still flat stomach even in sleep. The sight nearly broke something in me. This fierce, beautiful woman who's given me everything I never knew I wanted and more. Set up the meeting, I tell Victor, finally looking away from the ultrasound. It's time to settle things with the family once and for all. Are you sure about this? Victor asks carefully. Giving up your shares in the company. I'm not giving up anything. I cut him off. I'm investing in something far more valuable. Hours later, I watch Charles and Vivian Belmont enter our home with none of their usual confidence. They look smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of their choices. The designer clothes that once served as armor now hang awkwardly, like costumes they've forgotten how to wear. Behind them, Chloe hovers uncertainly, her eyes red from crying, her usual bubbly energy subdued to something more fragile. Emily tenses beside me on the sofa, her hand finding mine instinctively. I squeeze her fingers gently, reminding her she's not alone anymore. Never again. Emily, Vivian starts, her voice breaking on our daughter's name. Her perfectly manicured hands twist together anxiously. We didn't know about the baby, about what Henry planned. Didn't you? Emily's voice is steady, but I feel her trembling. You arranged my marriage knowing exactly who Artem was. You used your own daughter as bait, traded me like a business asset without a second thought to my safety or happiness. We thought we were protecting the family legacy, Charles says quietly, looking every one of his 60 years. We were wrong. So terribly wrong. When Henry told us his plan to use the marriage to gain control of Artem's assets, he breaks off, shaking his head. We should have stopped him then. Should have seen what he'd become. I study them carefully, looking for any sign of deception. But all I see is genuine regret, the desperate hope of parents who finally realized what they almost lost, what their ambition and pride nearly cost them. The legacy. I let the words hang heavy in the air, savoring the moment. Let's talk about that. I pull out a thick envelope, sliding it across the coffee table. Charles picks it up with shaking hands, his face paling as he reads. You're giving up your shares? He whispers, the paper trembling. All of them? Not giving up, I correct smoothly, letting a hint of danger color my tone. A reminder that while I may be choosing peace, I am far from harmless. Transferring them to their rightful owner. I turn to Emily, watching understanding dawn in those remarkable eyes. You were meant to run this company, Devochka. Now you can do it on your own terms. Artem, She stares at me, tears threatening to spill. I don't understand. Why would you? I do. The words come from Chloe, who steps forward with unexpected determination. You've always been the strongest of us, Emily. The one who saw things clearly. She swallows hard, fighting tears. I'm so sorry I doubted you. That I believed the lies about your marriage being fake. I should have known better. The way he looks at you. She glances at me, then back to her sister. No one could fake that kind of love. Emily's hand tightens in mine, and I feel her whole body trembling with emotion. Chloe. She rises from the sofa, and the sisters collide in a fierce embrace, years of misunderstandings dissolving in shared tears. I watch them with an odd tightness in my chest, remembering what it's like to have that kind of unconditional love, to have a family worth fighting for. The company is yours, I tell Emily when she returns to my side, tucking her close against me. Majority shareholder effective immediately. Build the legacy you've always dreamed of, the legacy that's rightfully yours. Charles clears his throat. And what about you? Your own business interests? My smile is sharp, predatory. I have other ventures to occupy my time, and a family to protect. I let my hand drift to Emily's stomach, claiming what's mine, a protective instinct rising inside me sharply. Consider this my investment in our future. The word carries weight, a reminder of exactly who and what I am. They may have accepted me as Emily's husband, may have come to terms with their guilt, but they should never forget the monster that lurks beneath my polished exterior. Voron can always make a return if needed. Later, after her family leaves with promises of fresh starts and regular Sunday dinners, I find Emily in our bedroom. She stands at the window, one hand pressed to her still flat stomach, lost in thought. The setting sun sets her hair ablaze, turning each auburn strand to living flame, and the sight of her steals my breath away. This woman who's transformed my world completely, shown me how dull my life was before I met her. Having regrets? I ask softly, coming up behind her to settle my hands on her waist. She leans back against my chest, fitting perfectly against me. Never. Not about us. She turns in my arms, those remarkable green eyes meeting mine, wide with openness and trust. But I need to know something. Anything. This marriage, it started as convenience, as a business arrangement so you could get your green card, and so my family wouldn't fall into ruin. But somehow along the way it became something real. When did it change for you? I cup her face in my hands, studying the woman who's become my everything and more. The moment you challenged me at that first gala, when you looked at me without fear, even knowing what I was capable of. Every ounce the woman I needed at my side. I brush my thumb across her lower lip, remembering every kiss, every touch that led us here. But I fought it, told myself it was safer to keep my distance from you, to keep things professional and impersonal. And now, her voice trembles slightly. Now? I slide one hand to her stomach, feeling the slight swell that marks where our child grows. Now I know there's no safety in distance from you, no protection in denial of my feelings. I love you, Emily, wholly and completely. You and this baby. You're everything to me. My redemption. My future. My home. Tears spill down her cheeks as she surges up to kiss me, pouring all her emotion into it. I taste salt and sweetness, love and hope and promise. I love you too, she whispers against my lips. The businessman and the Bratva boss. The man who can kill without mercy and love without limits. Voron and Artem. All of you. I gather her closer, overwhelmed by the gift she's giving me with her love. This fierce, beautiful woman who saw past my darkness to the man beneath, who's carrying my child and building our future with the same determination she brings to everything. We should celebrate, I murmur, nuzzling her neck and inhaling her scent. Your new position as CEO. Our baby. This second chance we've been given. She shivers as my lips find that sensitive spot below her ear that makes her moan when I'm inside her. What did you have in mind? My smile curves against her skin as I remember the silk rope waiting in our drawer. I seem to remember you enjoy being tied up, Devochka, and I have some very special rope that's perfect for pregnant wives. Her breath catches, desire darkening her eyes. Show me. If it's for us, I want to share it with you, as partners. That's what we are now, partners in everything. In business and pleasure, in darkness and light, in the family we're building, and the legacy we'll leave behind. Together.
Epilogue. Emily, 2 years later. The California sun bathes our estate's gardens in golden light as I watch my daughter chase butterflies through beds of roses. Alara's dark curls bounce with each step, her delighted giggles carrying towards me on the warm breeze. She has Artem's eyes, steel blue and intense, even at 2, but my spirit, fearless and bright, brave in everything, whether or not she should be. "Again, Mama," she calls, spinning in circles until she tumbles onto the manicured lawn. "Watch me fly." My heart swells with a love so fierce it steals my breath. Not just for my perfect, precious girl, but for everything she represents. The legacy of love that grew from an arranged marriage, the future built on foundations of trust rather than fear, love instead of convenience. "Careful, Princessa." Artem's voice rumbles from behind me, his arms sliding around my waist. "Your mama worries." I lean back against his solid chest, letting his warmth seep into me, and his breath stir the hairs at the nape of my neck. Says the man who installed extra security cameras just to watch her playground. His chuckle vibrates through me. A father can't be too careful. The party buzzes around us. Family and close friends gathered to celebrate Alara's birthday. Chloe chases after her niece, her architectural internship portfolio temporarily forgotten as she plays fairy princess. My parents hover near the cake table, pride evident in their faces as they watch the empire I've built flourish. Even Henry's ex-wife is here with their children, the wounds of his betrayal slowly healing as we forge a new kind of family. The company's stock hit another record high, my father mentions as he passes, pride evident in his voice. "That acquisition you orchestrated was brilliant, Emily. I couldn't have done better myself." I smile, remembering the boardroom where I now command respect rather than dismissal. The Singapore deal closes next week. We'll be expanding into Asian markets by quarter's end. After that, who knows what comes next? "My brilliant wife," Artem murmurs against my ear, his hands tightening possessively on my hips. "Taking over the world, one merger at a time. I couldn't be prouder, Devochka." Heat pools low in my belly at his touch, at the pride and desire in his voice. 2 years of marriage haven't dimmed our passion. If anything, it burns hotter now, deeper, fueled by trust and understanding rather than just attraction.
The following scene is too spicy for this version on YouTube. You can find the uncensored version on bellakingbooks.com or by following the link in the description. Thank you.